Hour of 7:30 has arrived, so I'd like to call to order this study session with District 116 for October 1st, 2019. Roll call, please.
Member Carter.
Here.
Member Exum.
Here.
Member Patton.
Here.
Member Pulaski.
Here.
Member Fisher is here. Vice President Hall.
Here.
And President Dimick.
Here. Good to be back.
Yes, good to have you back.
Good to have you back.
Any additions or corrections, modifications to this evening's agenda? Seeing none. Citizen statements. Do we have any citizens that wish to address the board tonight? If you do, please fill out a goldenrod sheet and hand it in to our recording secretary, Lori. We have none at the moment, but we'll give a few minutes if anyone wishes to change their mind. I'd like to, at this point in time, thank Austin Pontius and Molly Sweeney for running the cameras tonight.
Thank you.
So, anyone wish to address the board? Seeing none, we have no call for an exec session tonight either, so a motion to approve this evening's agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Administrative reports, School Improvement Empower Grant update. Ms. Norton.
Good
Doctor.
evening, everyone. Tonight I'm updating you on the 1003A, also known as the Empower Grant that was available beginning last year. These federal funds are designated for schools that are lowest performing or underperforming. At this point, the designations, the grant that we just applied for this year, we went through the first approval process, so we're still waiting on final approval. But it will be a 3-year, over 3 years that it will take place. We're still focusing on those 4 schools. As of right now, though, we're still waiting. The new designation should be out any time to see if there's any changes with those 4 schools, and hopefully we won't have any added. If you look at your packet, you'll see the 4 schools and their allocations each. Now, the allocations that you'll see for each school is in the first year, we get 66% of the funds up front. So if we take a look at that, we'll see $100,000 is for Wiley, $114,633 for Dr. Preston Williams Jr. And the reason why that's a little bit more, there's some calculations called Safe Harbor that gives a little bit more money. It's based on enrollment and other resources that, extra resources that are needed at that school. So they get a little bit more. Yankee Ridge is at $30,000 and Urbana Middle School at $48,546. So last May, Urbana Middle School brought their school improvement plan, and so those goals, we just received word last April regarding this grant, so it was a quick process last year. So we'll be using those same school improvement goals that were shared in May for Urbana Middle School, and then the elementary plans were shared in June, so we'll be looking at those same goals. But if we look at the worksheets, if we first look at Wiley, you'll see that we have a clear focus that how we're going to meet those goals. So first is extended day learning and additional literacy and math support. And that will meet goal 2 with all students improving their oral reading and comprehension. They're doing a reading rally that they're having with additional supports, and funds are also being used for transportation. Also, zones of regulation are implemented daily along with second step as ESL curriculum, and then that will meet, actually that was for goal 1, self-regulation as a mechanism to reduce discipline. So they're using zones of regulation. It helps students identify certain emotions with different zones, different colors, so that they can control their behaviors. And then increasing opportunities for family engagement through academic evening events. And that focuses on goal 3, all students, family, and staff feeling accepted, respected, and safe. And I was able to attend Wiley's first math night, and it was a huge success. They had a very high attendance and different stations for the students and families. And Dr. Preston Williams has their focus of their weekly writing coaching, and this is provided through the IARSS, the Illinois Association of Regional Schools, through the ROE. And so we're working with them with an additional instructional coach that is providing modeled lessons, but also really working with teachers during collaboration times to focus specifically on writing. And then also was added is extended day opportunities for math. So they've added that this year. And trauma-informed practices, PD, through, again, IERSS. That's the lead partner that we're using through the ROE to maximize student class time and have restorative behavioral approaches. If we look at the next page for Yankee Ridge, using conscious discipline training, and this was actually provided to staff in August of 2019. Since we submitted this grant early, we can be retroactive back to July 1, so we can get reimbursed for that. And then also professional development through IERSS to strengthen literacy, writing, and promote culturally relevant topics. And that's meeting the goal of maximizing reading improvement through guided reading that they had in their plan. And then finally, looking at Urbana Middle School, creating a college and career readiness environment designed to help students develop the skills they need to be successful. Special emphasis on growing writing, critical thinking, teamwork, organization, and reading skills. And the plan is to use some upcoming PD this summer and to really promote that college and career environment throughout UMS. In addition, they've really focused on improving math skills by increasing student engagement, providing more opportunities that you can see that they've done this year by creating more course offerings and providing acceleration. And then also at the middle school, they are piloting Behavior Flip. And that's a mechanism to track and restore student behaviors and provide social emotional data to create student snapshots. So it gives students, it's not just recording data and making punitive referrals, but it's positive referrals so that the students have an opportunity to restore that behavior. It could be circles that are requested or opportunities for conflict resolution. And so that's a big part of their plan. And I also added a couple other pages that I wanted you to be able to take a look at that just gives the explanation of how each school is designated from exemplary to commendable to underperforming to lowest performing. And then the last page is a pie chart that shows how schools receive those designations. It's broken down, and there are some changes from last year on those percentages. So for K through 8, science is being added to the pie this year. And so that's using the Illinois Science Assessment for grades 5 and 8. And then ELA and math, it was 10% each, and now that's going down to 7.5% each, and that gets the science in there. And then some changes at the high school level. One that's going to help us is chronic absenteeism. And that's if a student is absent for any reason at all, excused, unexcused, it counts against us. Vacations, anything like that. It was 20%, but now that's going to 10. And the culture climate survey, the 5 essentials, was 5% for students that we get, and really as long as we meet that threshold and have our students take it, it was 5%. Now it's 6.67 of the pie. And then another big change is the freshman on track was 6.25%, but it's 8.33% towards the designation. And then the same with ELA and math, it's 7.5% each. And then science is also part of this. And biology is what is assessed with the Illinois Science Assessment. So just a little background of where we are and where we're going, and we're still, like I said, waiting to see if there's what our designations are going to look like this year.
I just had a couple quick questions for
Sure.
you. For the extended day learning, is that going to be, I noticed that on a couple of the grade schools, Wiley and
Dr. Williams.
Dr. Williams, yes, thank you. Is that going to be like an after-school
Correct. It is after
program or
school.
pull out during the day? I didn't know which.
It is extra time provided after the school day. And
Okay.
so that's utilizing staff that they have, so that's part of the budget, is paying staff to work that time And then in the case of Wiley, they also have transportation as well.
Okay. Then that was going to be my next question, if they provided transportation or not for the
Yes.
students.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Other
Yeah,
other
I just-
questions? Peggy?
Are the amounts that you show here, are we getting 66% of those amounts that you show here?
Okay, so that is the 66%.
Oh, okay, that is the
So then
60, okay.
year 2 and year 3 will be less.
Well, okay.
So we get 66% of it up front, and
I
that
see.
is the 66%.
Front-loaded and then, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
And just another point to mention, if for some reason anything would change and we have schools, our schools would make improvements, we still get to keep that money for year 1, year 2, year 3. We don't have to give anything back if we show improvement. That's just so we can sustain our efforts.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions, school board members? All right, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Next, we move, we have no policy reviews tonight. We do have an action item, Press Plus 101. Yes.
So I did just want to let the board know that this is just the Press Plus 101, not the holdover policy 270 regarding administering medicines to students that was left over from Press 100. So we're still actively exploring our options around the undesignated asthma medication. Todd is in charge of the nurses, and he's kind of been working with Tammy, and Tammy's been reaching out to other districts. So we're very close to having a set plan, but we didn't want to approve that one, not being able to tell you exactly. You know, we had a discussion about how many inhalers do we have and where do we keep them at our last meeting. So we don't have that plan finalized yet. So this is just Press Plus 101, not that holdover policy from 7270. So hopefully at our next meeting, we'll be able to bring you back our plan for that, and we'll approve that so we can get that entered by the deadline at the end of October. Do you want to say anything else, Todd?
Just
about that?
briefly, yeah, I think the last piece we're putting in place is making sure we're able to get a prescription for those undesignated inhalers, and it's looking like the school-based health center will be able to help us with that, but we're just finalizing that before we bring it back to you.
Okay.
All right. Is there a motion to approve? I know that you all discussed this at the previous meeting. So are we ready for action? If we are, I need a motion.
I move acceptance of Press Plus 101.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. All right, we move forward to our study topics then this evening. Our first one is the Urbana Schools Foundation update.
So Kelly Hill, Executive Director of Champaign-Urbana Schools Foundation, is going to give us a little update. She has some video, some programming ideas.
So can we take care of the lights so we can see the screen?
Yep.
All right. It's great to be here tonight with everybody. Great to see Jennifer over here on the other side of Wright Street. She was a tremendous ally in Champaign, and I know she's doing amazing things already here for Urbana, so I'm very pleased to be continuing to get to work with her. This little video was about 3 minutes long. I know many of you have seen it before, but we have a project going on at Fowler Farm where we are working with Urbana Middle School and high school students, as well as Edison Middle School. And we have a small plot of land where we are doing some amazing things. And we are right next to Hendrick House, which is farming 10 acres of their organic garden for their use in the Betsy Bistro's food catering service, and also in their dormitory. So, play.
Having the support of Champaign-Urbana School Foundation and the finances that they can give us to have an outdoor opportunity to work on some projects is unbelievable. Fowler Farm and our bee project, you play and hands-on is difficult without support from the community. And so I feel like in the past few years as a science teacher, I got this outdoor lab that's called Fowler Farm. I had this opportunity to have some beehives close to the school, and it's a dream come true.
Fowler Farm is a place where students can come and feel and see and experience the real parts of a science curriculum that I teach in the classroom, but is rather removed from them otherwise. They get an opportunity to feel what it really does feel like to dig in the soil and see the different components of the soils, the different layers of the soil.
But after I went out to Fowler Farms, everything changed for me because I started caring about the place. And once I started caring about the place itself, I started to care about the environment as a whole. Because of that, I wanted to go into environmental engineering now, and that's not something I would have considered otherwise.
Having these outlets is satisfying on a level that I can't really describe. And because people already exhibit this type of like biophilia or love for living things in nature, it kind of fulfills an inner part of you that you don't realize you need to fulfill.
I think places like Fowler Farms make such a huge impact on students. There's such a huge difference between, say, learning about the anatomy of the chicken in your science class, if you get to that, and actually seeing one in person, or hearing about photosynthesis and reading about it, or actually going out there and watching something grow and bloom. And I think just like those plants, I got the opportunity to grow myself out there.
When teachers want to do a project out of the box, more often than not, the limiting factor is funding. And so CUSF has been the cheerleader for our project almost from the beginning. CUSF really took on a main interest in what we were doing. So it is really important for people to understand that these out of the ordinary kind of activities only come about through a vision, and that vision being funded by people that really are willing to give.
Great. You should have, the board should have a packet just on the front here. I'm just going to walk you through the first couple slides, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about what the foundation's been doing recently. I know many of you came to our breakfast and were able to learn a little bit more about it then. But just to review what our mission is really about elevating the excellence that is already in our schools. We are there to fuel our teachers and to make them feel seen and heard and honored, to give them money to support their vision, and also we know that filters directly down to our students. We're hoping to change lives by partnering with the Champaign-Urbana Public Schools, provide students and educators with resources to create the best educational opportunities. Our goals and initiative, these are the areas that we really like to fund. We're in our grant process, which ends at midnight tonight, so the teachers are writing their final little bits of their grants tonight. But these are the areas we're looking to give funding to. Fine and performing arts, STEM, health and wellness, early literacy, preschool through third grade primarily, expanding ESL and world languages and K-12, and career and technical education has been a big interest of ours most recently. A little bit about what we did last year. We gave away 64,000 close to grants to 108 teachers in 26 schools. Again, this is across both districts. We awarded 18,400 in scholarship funds to 22 different seniors from Urbana and Centennial and Central. And we have a connections fund. You're familiar with it as the SOS fund previously, where we provided hotel rooms for homeless families. That fund has changed slightly. The money is now going toward clothing and supplies. We were unable to keep commitments with the hotels for a variety of reasons, but and I mentioned this last year, of the 9 seniors we had last year involved in this program, all 9 of them were able to graduate. So part of this program is to keep them coming back to school where we know they have the resources and support of our teachers. This is a Urbana student last year. He's going to be attending Eastern Illinois, majoring in Spanish and psychology, Kamari, and he's there with Minnie Pearl. Urbana High School again. This is Cora Welch. She was selected for an award, and she received the Greg Chu Award, and she is working on an art scholarship, I believe, at UIUC. This is Anita Stein, who's on our board, a former Urbana School member, and this is Aaron Wright, who I believe is going to Loyola, working on a, I can't remember, microbiology degree, I believe. She's very smart, and she received the Judge Green Award. And this is Dorian and myself, and Dorian is attending, I believe, Eastern Illinois, or no, UIUC, and she received the Difference Maker Award for us last year. This is just a few shots of our breakfast. We were entertained by the Urbana Choir. Becky Park brought her students. Steve Beckett, another Urbana alum and great member of our community, today was selected to be a historian for the, I believe it's the Abraham Lincoln Museum. He's our board chair this year. Nate Wall, educator, special ed teacher over at Yankee Ridge. These are some, the young men are part of the Parkland program, where they are working with Parkland in automotive services program, and we'll talk a little bit more about them. And then here's Jennifer and Wade and Angie and I. So our collaborative grants are one of the largest funding sources that we provide. We give $5,000 to a collaborative grant every year. This is a little bit more about our Fowler Farm program. These are some of the students and teachers that were out at Fowler Farm. As you see, we have chickens. We were building bee hotels. Not sure what those are, but we were building bee hotels. We've dug 2 ponds out there, so there's 2 ponds, 1.5 feet deep maybe, to kind of increase the biodiversity that's out there. We had some wild asparagus growing that the students were showing off. Somehow they all love to hold the chickens. The high schools will be working on a chicken genetics project this year. And then we had some summer school STEM students out there doing some planting as well. That's a bee hotel. I'll have to read up on that. As you can see, this is a large group of the teachers that were out there helping. We also have a collaboration with Hendrick House, and Ann Swanson, their farm director over there, comes over and helps us quite a bit with some of our programming. At the end of Fowler Farm, which is pretty much now, as everything has kind of grown and the produce is done, we have a chop challenge that we do at Urbana High School. And Amanda and Julie bring not only Urbana students together with the Edison students, and they mix on teams, and we give them eggs from the garden. Excuse me, eggs don't grow in the garden. Eggs from the chicken, and 3 different greens from the garden, and they have to make a meal or make a dish. So it's pretty exciting to see the different things that they come up with. Some more edible than others, but a great challenge for them. We do that over in Urbana as a way to. And we bring 3 chefs in from different restaurants here in the community, and they're the judges, so they know a little bit about what good food should taste like. Part of what we'll be doing tomorrow is dedicating a pavilion that's not quite done, but we were given $25,000 from Farm Credit Illinois about a year ago at our open house. The gentleman came up to me in the back, the very tall one, and said, I'm from Farm Credit Illinois. What do you guys need out here? And I just said, well, the teachers have really been talking about having an outdoor classroom. And a week later, he called me and sent us a check for $25,000. So we've been building that most of the summer. This is it in progress, but it'll seat 30 students on stools with some portable tables that they'll be able to put away into some storage closets. It's just a concrete pad, but just a place for them to kind of get out of. Last thing we want to do is take them from the school building and put them back in a school building, but as you can see, this is not quite the same as that. It'll just give them a chance to be out of the weather, but this is a tremendous opportunity for us to kind of grow this building a little bit. And these are the various people that helped us, because of course we needed volunteer labor, so we had Andy Armstrong help us with materials, an architect that helped us here from Bailey Edward. Hedrick House, of course, was involved, some different concrete folks. The Urbana Habitat Club came out and helped on the day when it poured rain. And then some of our local laborers were able to come out and help as well. So to give you an idea of some of the grants that we've been giving, the Hot Rodders Explore Automotive Careers grant was given to those students, their high school students that are participating in the Parkland program. So they're out there for early college and career academy, which is dual credit. They participate in a national competition where they have to take apart and put together a V8 engine in 33 minutes. And there are 3 teams now at Parkland with our 3 high schools that are competing at the national level to do this. And they've been doing it for 2 or 3 years, and they've been very successful, and they're very proud to hold the checks that we gave them. But they will be going, I hate to say this, but they're all going to Las Vegas because that's where the show is. And they compete in this show, they compete in this competition, and it's a huge opportunity for them to get exposure to different kinds of careers in the automotive field. So they are the dual credit engine competition team from Parkland College, and they are really mostly high school seniors from Urbana, Centennial, and Central. Another large grant that we gave, this was cross-district. This was called Sensory for All. So we had Nate Wall, who you saw from Yankee Ridge, who's a special ed teacher, and one of his classmates from U of I, Eastern, was Brittany Brzezinski, and the 2 of them wanted to do a grant together. So instead of having sensory supports just for the special needs students, we provided sensory supports for every student in every classroom in both Stratton and in Yankee Ridge last year. So the students had a chance to have exposure to the bouncy bands, the balls, the different kinds of things that are being used with special needs students to help them stay focused and stay on task and stay in the classroom. And it was amazing to see how not only obviously these tools are working with our special needs students, but they're also working with some of our other students. They brought in the U of I autism department, and they did the autism project did all the training for the teachers. So the teachers were trained on how to use the materials that we provided, and all the students in both of those schools had access to it. We also had a really creative teacher at Dr. Williams, Maggie Byrne and Aaron Anderson. K-5 students learned about recycling, how to be environmentally conscious. They use reusable utensils in their lunchroom for a while, and they built compost bins for the students to learn about composting. And so they got to use power tools, and they built some bins, and they all got to have a chance to think and learn about what composting does and what goes into it, and then they saw what they put into it from their lunches. So that was a really cool grant that Dr. Williams had. And finally, we encourage people to join our 365 Club and be part of funding these grants every year. Last year, like I said, we gave away about $65,000. We're hoping to be able to give away more this year. Then in the spring, of course, the scholarships are opportunities that we have both endowed, restricted, a wide variety of different scholarships that we work with the guidance counselors at all 3 high schools to provide. And much of those funds are through the 365 Club. This little colorful piece is our annual report, so you can just kind of see what some of those numbers were last year. And on the back, you can see who our members were and who our current board of directors is. And I believe I also might have left you a pledge form. The last form is their information about the open house, which is tomorrow night. And we scheduled it from 5 to 7, but at like 6:30, it was really dark tonight. So I think we'll be done by 6:30. If you'd like to come out and join us and see what Fowler Farm is all about, we'd love to have you come and kind of see what we're doing. And I'm open for any questions that you guys might have. John?
Any questions for Kelly?
We are the cheerleaders for y'all, so we believe in everything that those teachers are doing, and we know it's a hard job, and we know that when they feel seen and heard, they're going to do great work with the students. So we're here to support you in all ways possible. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I think you did a great job. I think the program's really expanded since it first started, the CU School Foundation.
Great.
So
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Our next study topic is understanding middle school student needs to support school success.
Okay, so while Dr. Klingenberg is bringing her team up, you have her PowerPoint there, and her colleague, her collaborator, Dr. Gard from the University of Illinois. They're going to share a little bit about their study.
Okay, good evening. How are you? How are you? Good, good, okay. So we are going to present, as Dr. Ivy Tatum stated, Understanding Middle School Student Needs to Support School Success. Like she said, my name is Dr. Jania Bivens. I am the 7th grade clinical professional at Urbana Middle School. This is my lovely co-conspirator.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel Garth. I'm a professor at the University of Illinois in the School of Social Work.
So we're going to kind of talk about just kind of how the idea started and what we're doing, what the results were from the study this past year, and then what we're doing with the information as well as where we're going from there, okay? So the idea, Joe actually kind of sparked the idea when I got hired last year. He kind of mentioned and just in conversation about the possibility of a research study. And as we were doing planning last summer before the school year started, we were just kind of talking about different ways of doing like universal screenings. How can we get information about what the needs are of the student? How do we do a universal screening? So I kind of had a thought. I was like, research study, universal screening, how can we do this? So I contacted the university, and they connected me with Kevin Tan. I think you all know Kevin Tan. He works with the high school. He does research with the high school. And he referred me to Dr. Garth because she works directly with middle school, and she's been doing it many years in Chicago with the University of Chicago as well during research studies. So the purpose of this was to identify the needs of our 6th grade students, because last year I was a 6th grade clinical professional, okay? And so it was just kind of to identify what the students perceive their needs to be. And then utilizing that information in order to adapt or to create programs and interventions based off of the needs of the students, okay? And as we know, middle school is probably the most terrible time of a child's life, socially and emotionally. This is where they're trying to identify who they are, what's going on with them. You know, they're a different kid every 10 minutes. You know, they wake up one kid and go to bed a different one. So it's kind of like a hard time for them. So we really need to know what their perception of themselves were. And so understanding them, like I said, it would strengthen and create new programs and services for supports for the students as a whole. So last year, what we did was we started with 6th grade students, and we invited them to participate. The parents were able to opt out if they didn't want their child to participate. They had to send in a form just to let us know they did not want the children to participate in the survey. But gratefully, most of them did. We had 316 students participate, which was 93.77%. Okay, and that's, Rachel mentioned that all the research she does, that's a high number, you know, of participation, which is awesome. So it gives us the most accurate data based off of our student population. And so we did surveys in the fall. No, okay, this is this year, sorry. Yeah, this is this year. Okay, so looking forward, we're gonna come back to this later, but looking forward, what we're going to do this year. So the purpose is to follow our 6th graders from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade, collecting data each year. So we can compare the data, and so we can utilize that information in order to create interventions and programs and use community partners in order to support the students in the school, as well as really utilize our support teams as much as possible. It's very important to have our support teams in the schools because in order to provide services and interventions, we have to have skilled and knowledgeable professionals in order to do that. So this coming year, we're gonna work with our last year 6th graders, or 7th graders this year. So we're going to do the surveys with them again this year, so we can have 2 years worth of data, and then we're going to start with the 6th graders this year. Okay, so we're going to have 6th grade doing a survey, and then 7th grade doing a survey this year. 8th grade, we're going to have a community partner come in, Courage Connections, and they're going to do a specific program just for 8th graders, because they're on the way out the door. So we want to kind of work with them on positive relationships and how to establish, how to maintain and identify positive relationships, because they're going to high school. So 6th and 8th grade teachers this year and school staff and parents will be included this year. So that's going to be interesting, right? Because a student's perspective of themselves and perception is different from a staff and a parent. And if those numbers are completely different, then that tells us something else, that we have to look into parent cafes. We need to look into workshops for staff trainings and, just different areas that we need to increase and enhance knowledge and information in order to best support our students. Parent and guardian of 6th grade and 7th students will be asked to participate in survey this fall as well. Okay, so we're starting with 6th grade in October this month, and then the first week in November we're going to start with, 7th grade, no, 6th grade, yeah. 6th grade is October, first week of November will be 7th grade. So now we're going to go into the research data, which is Dr. Garth's place. And so I'm going to let her go ahead and go from there.
Well, I know we have limited time, so I just want to kind of give an overview of the data. I teach statistics at U of I, so I could talk about data all day, but I promise I will not do that tonight for you all. I just want to kind of give us an overview of some of the findings that we found from last year's group of 6th graders. Again, kind of thinking about how can we use this data to best support our students, again, being really responsive to what they were telling us in this survey. So I'm just going to go through the slides relatively quickly. If you have questions on any of these slides, feel free to stop me at any point. I just want to kind of show some of the highlights from the survey. So we were able to just kind of get an understanding of who our 6th graders were. You see here and in your packets some information about their identifications in terms of race and ethnicity, gender, and their age. We were able also to get detailed information on their family structure, again, seeing a diversity in terms of different family members that these students are living with. We have a lot more data on that to really understand how many siblings, grandparents, et cetera, that are living in their household as well. We obtained information on special education status as well as students who were in the dual language program. So we were able to translate the surveys into French and Spanish. So we were able to include those students in the survey as well. We were also able to link with attendance and GPA data at the school, so we were able to kind of see how these different mental health and victimization questions could be associated with different school and educational outcomes. And so we'll be using that a lot as we move forward to make sure that we're making good progress. I'm going to pause here because I think this was kind of a focal point when we were kind of running the first results, just kind of understanding from these mental health screeners that we employed during the survey. So we used a measure that allowed us to assess for clinical levels of different mental health symptoms. So we specifically assessed for levels of anxiety and depression. And we were really surprised to see kind of the high level of students, and these are again 6th graders who are indicating that they're experiencing clinical or really worrisome levels of anxiety and depression. So approximately 20 to 27% of students were indicating some level of anxious or depressive symptoms. And again, you see in the graph here that the orange group is also the at-risk group, so they're kind of reaching towards that threshold of also experiencing those higher levels of symptoms. So again, I just reiterating the importance of the incredible support staff that UMS has in terms of mental health. It's a really important need, and I think as we continue with this survey, it'll be important to see kind of how those numbers may change as they go through middle school, and as different programs and services are added to see if there are differences in these numbers as we move forward. We also assessed for levels of violence and victimization among these students. This was using national survey questions so we could get some sense of relativity of these students in comparison to national norms. We see similar numbers among UMS students in terms of amounts of bullying that these students have experienced. So anywhere from 30 to 48% of students indicated a form of bullying, whether it was physical, threats, or with verbal forms of bullying. One thing we were also really interested in, we know we're in a day of age where electronic victimization is becoming important, that we continue to discuss and consider how we're having these conversations with our middle schoolers. So we just wanted to see kind of what are they reporting in terms of victimization through Snapchat, through Facebook, through Twitter, just to really understand what those experiences are like. And we saw that 61% of students indicated they had experienced one form of victimization from either a friend, a boyfriend, girlfriend, or dating partner, someone at school, or someone else that they had experienced that already. So that's something I think we definitely want to keep tracking of and keep understanding that experience for these students as well. On a more positive note, social skills and self-esteem were also assessed, and we saw average to above average levels of social skills in a multitude of different domains. On the next slide too is really important, is that these students indicated really positive relationships with their caregivers. And so they felt like they had a parent that they could talk to, that parents know where their children are, that the rules are clear in the household. And so there was a above average score for levels of, their perceptions with caregivers. As we move towards adding the parents to the surveys, it'll be interesting to see kind of how those perceptions change. We also assess for things about safety, again, being really responsive to where can we add different supports at UMS to enhance feelings of safety around the building. You see in the gray area that the majority of students feel safe in the majority of places around the school building. So most of the time or always they feel safe on the way to school, way back from school. One area that we noted that was a little bit lower levels of safety was specifically a gym class at school, so kind of thinking about what things we can do to maybe enhance safety there in the next school year. We also assess for forms of discrimination, again, based on color of skin, language or accent, culture, country of origin. So again, crossing different contexts, so not just at school, but in the community as well. And about half students indicated that they'd experienced at least one form of discrimination. And then it was really great to see this. Like Dr. Bivens said, I've been working with schools for a long time, and I always see lots of range of students' perceptions of their relationships with teachers and staff. And I was really excited because Urbana was actually the highest I've ever seen in terms of just really supportive they felt by all of their teachers. So I just want to highlight that because I think we oftentimes get buried by kind of the negative findings or the things that are kind of worrisome. But across the board on all the items that were asked around teachers and staff support, these students feel really supported and that they can talk to their teachers and school staff. So I do want to just acknowledge that as well. And then finally, because I'm a stats person, I started to kind of explore how can we use these data to really help us be thinking about what are these connections between mental health and victimization with some of our academic outcomes. And so just some of the preliminary analyses are in your packets as well. So again, I'm happy to talk in more detail about those. Everyone in here that knows me knows I will love to talk with those with you. But just kind of really highlighting again the importance that we continue to understand these experiences that our 6th and 7th grade and 8th grade students are experiencing because they are influencing parts of their academic careers, they're impacting other aspects of their development, and so it's really important that we continue these conversations about how we can best support our students. So I will turn back to Dr. Bivens to talk about some of the takeaways.
So some of the takeaways, so obviously from the statistics, many of our 6th graders are experiencing at-risk or clinical levels of mental health symptoms. This is where our support staff comes in strong, okay? To have so many support staff available for our youth, it makes it very important in I don't know what I'm looking for, but helpful for our students to be able to have someone to immediately turn to, in addition to our teachers. Making sure our teachers are equipped with the knowledge and information to help support the students in the classroom, but also knowing that they have somebody to turn to within their grade level that understands the students when they need support and help with the student. When the student comes to them and say, hey, I have this problem, I have this issue, or they come and report something to them, they have some place to go in order to get that support and assistance. And then many 6th graders are also experiencing victimization and discrimination. Discrimination, victimization, and mental health symptoms are related to students' GPA. This is why it's so important and why we want to focus a lot on mental health, because mental health and GPA are correlated. And in order to help with mental health, in order to help with academics, you got to help with mental health. You have to address it. You can't ignore it. And so we want to pinpoint the specific needs of the students, and perception of the students is what is really important. We can say what we think it is all day long, but it's a student's perception, their own perception, which creates the behaviors, right? Make sense? So that's why we want to really look at mental health. One of the things that we want to look at also, just to notate also, for this year, we already have identified external funds in order to provide gift cards. We're going to do a gift card raffle for the student participants, and then we're giving $20 gift cards to all parents, all staff, and participating in a research study. So that's already been obtained as well. But with these statistics and this information, we want to make sure that we continue the conversation with teachers, parents, students, and the community in order to help us support our students more. And through this information, we're going to create and we're going to establish more intervention programs. So we have group counseling inside of the school, which many of our support staff do. And many of the counseling groups that we're doing now, our Tier 2 groups, are based off of the research data that we collected from last year, because we're working with students this year who are 7th graders. In addition to that, we have community partners. We have 9 community partners who signed up with us already to work with us this year. Many of them are coming in to provide intervention groups. So, for example, we have Rattle the Star. She's going to come in this year to do a suicide prevention workshop or group. We had her come in last year. She did workshops for the parents. We had a parent night where she came and did some information for parents, and she came in during Suicide Prevention Week at the end of the school year to discuss and have open discussions with students. We have Lead for Life, which works on positive decision making. Okay, so we're incorporating our community partners and our support staff in the school to help service our students not only based off of the data that we receive, but also based off of the things that we identify that is a need as well, whether it be life skills training, social awareness. We have internet safety, obviously, because students feel victimized through the internet. And we have our wonderful Officer Robinson, who is just a wonderful addition to Urbana Middle School, and I really appreciate her being there. She has a vast knowledge and information of many things. She works with many of our students, already know them outside of the school as well as know them inside of the school, and she has knowledge about internet safety. So that's an area in where she can help support us as well, as far as like doing workshops or having conversations, with our students. Other things that we want to look into doing based off of the data is, like I mentioned before, doing parent cafes and workshops, providing information for parents to gain just general knowledge and what they can do to help and assist their student as needed. What else? I'm sorry, I'm looking at my list here. Got so much information. I was like, we got 15 minutes. Too much to talk about. And then also making sure that the programs that we utilize, even with our community partners coming in, are evidence-based. Either they have an evidence-based program or we're providing the evidence base in order to develop the program in order to best support our students. I think I got everything.
I think you did.
Is that everything? I think that's everything. It's a lot of information. So obviously, if you have any questions or anything, we really look forward to you all coming to visit us this year. We would love for you all to come and see what some of our community partners are doing with us, to come and see what we're doing with our students. We just, as a team, as a support team, we need as much support from the community, from the board, as possible. And if that means you all coming in and just seeing what we're doing, that's what it is. If you all have a specialty or expertise that you would like to assist with, or talk to some students about, some staff about, just let us know. And we would love to have you come. Come home to Urbana Middle School.
All right, any questions for Dr. Bivens or Dr. Garth?
Yeah, thank you. Could you talk a little bit more, well, I mean, I guess a general question, then a specific question. Are the surveys anonymous?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah, so we make sure that before we get the surveys out, that we let the students know that everything they tell us is completely confidential.
Okay.
We don't put their names anywhere on the surveys, so I think that
Uh-huh.
helps with them feeling they can be open and honest with their responses. And then, we physically remove that signature for their consenting, separate from their survey, so their name is never tied to the survey.
Okay.
So
I guess
they're a
that's-
number. It's a
They're a
number,
number,
and the
okay.
numbers are
Yep.
associated so we can,
Makes
connect the
sense.
data.
So, I mean, I guess, so, I was just looking at the percentages of kids that you identify as being, clinically depressed. I mean, it's almost a third of our students. And so I guess twofold, I mean, how do you assess that level? I mean, is it a question that's self-reported by a student? Are you clinically depressed, or is there another way you get at it? And
Yes, it's a series of 13 questions. It's using the behavioral assessment system for children, which then provides a normed score so that we can assess based on other kids that same age, the same gender, to see kind of where in national norms those students fall in terms of clinical levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no way actually that we can provide, directed supports to kids who fall into that category, because we don't really know who they are.
No.
But I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's just where, awareness of the number of students who are experiencing that comes in, about thinking about what kinds of programs we can employ that are really specifically targeting mental health, and that way students feel like they can be supported and come to teachers and staff and have conversations around those topics.
And many of those students do identify themselves to us, just in the general need of day-to-day for services. So do we know who they are from the survey per se? No, but as we see the need during the school day or, self-reports or staff reports, that's how we kind of, know who some of the people are.
And some of those supports, and I saw Joe was like on the edge of his seat, maybe wanting to come up and say something, but Dr. Bivens, the supports that she was talking about in terms of that student support team is kind of that tier one. That's, I think, what Dr. Guimel was getting ready to come up and say. It is kind of a universal, so it is a way to hit everyone without targeting specific kids, but since that number is so high, all of the 7th graders get the benefit, but.
Just pass the mic over to him because it won't pick up that far away.
Yeah, Dr. Bivens has mentioned support staff several times, and I think it's important to acknowledge that's a team of 8 individuals approximately. So that's student engagement advocates, clinical professional, social worker, counselor, restorative practices facilitators that's what we refer to as support team by grade level. That are working with students. There's a variety of different types of assessments, informal and formal, that are done to gauge where students are in terms of mental health needs. While this survey was anonymous and not directly linked to specific students, there's a variety of other measures that are done with teachers in the classroom, outside the classroom, to get a better sense of kids in need of services and support in the school. We're also looking at incorporating other types of screeners, universal screeners, that are more directly tied to students so that we can provide direct services to students accordingly. But this one's more anonymous to look at broader trends and broader interventions that across the school.
Peggy, anything else? Ann?
Thank you. This is a really comprehensive list of data. Are you comparing it? Are you able to compare it with statewide, national, or other districts around here that are similar in demographics?
I think that's the next plan. So we specifically chose questions that were from the Illinois Youth Survey, from the national surveys around violence and victimization, so that we can start to make those comparisons. I also have done a survey with 22 schools in Chicago Public Schools, so I'm going to start to look at some of those comparisons as well, and hoping to make comparisons with other local school districts as well. So yeah.
Are you tracking positive interventions? Because I know that came up with discussion. I mean, we don't want just the referrals because of behavioral infractions, but when they come to you for help, is that somehow going to be able to feed into what you're learning from this?
Yeah, we can do so many things with the data that we collect. And so in the interventions that we provide, we're collecting data within school. We're collecting data on that as well. This was just looking at specifically mental health, in that area. But the interventions the positive interventions that we're providing is within school. And actually, and behavior flip is one of the areas in which we can collect that data. But Ms. Garth actually offered this year that she's open to helping us with the data, do whatever we need to do with the data, pull out whatever we need. And the opportunities are endless. So just to have someone, able to do that for us, because Joe actually, when we met with Joe first, he would say, hey, can you do this? Can you do it? He's actually the one who told us to pull out, specifically dual language, and pull out specifically SPED, so we all work together as a team because Urbana works better together. Right? So it's a team effort in order to obtain this data. And yes, it's the positive resiliency components of data that we really want to see as well, and this is what we're going to start seeing more of as we start implementing more of these interventions and having students come out. Many of our workshops and things and the thing our community partners coming in to do are not all just because of behavior issues. Some of them are like just skills groups or just a community like Soul Hot is coming in, Speak Our Lives, Hear Our Truth. So it's a group for African American girls to come out and just learn about their experience in working with social and emotional issues and things like that. So, it's not because there was an issue with anybody. This is just an experience for youth to be able to have a place and an openness in order to live their truths.
One other thing that at our regional office administrator kickoff, the guest speaker spoke about Generation Z, like our current youth, our current generation, and seeing across the country higher numbers of students at that age level, Generation Z, experiencing more mental health needs, right? Higher rates of depression, higher rates of anxiety than ever before, than any other generation. So I don't know how UMS compares specifically to other middle schools per se, but in general, we're seeing that across the country, and you would be a
Social
better expert
media.
than me. But social media, what is it?
FOMO.
FOMO.
Fear
Fear of missing out. So a lot of the social anxiety is due to feeling connected, but you're in isolation on your phone. And fear of missing out because you see everybody else having fun, thinking their life's better, but they're thinking the same thing about you because you see each other on social media.
And with the parent surveys, that's something we're going to look at as well, is how the parents are monitoring their students' cell phone and social media use. We're going to get the student's perspective, and then we're going to get the parents' perspective, so we can kind of see how that works and kind of compare data from there as well.
We really want to be responsive to UL too, so if there's topics that you would like to see, we are continually trying to modify this and be responsive to kind of things different community organizations want to see added to the survey and things like that. So I just want to pose that as well to the group.
Thank you. So why do you think that we're seeing more of this mental health issues currently at such a young age? Do you think things are not being diagnosed early enough, or that social emotional skills are not being taught? What is your perspective on this?
Well, it's actually a gambit of things. But many of our youth, a lot of times, can you hear me? A lot of times, the social and emotional component, how to self-regulate your emotions, is not being taught as early, as we see needed now. Our students have much more access to social media, comparing themselves to different people, having experiences that generations haven't had before, and trying to, and more violence in movies and video games, and, just, it's a lot of things that plays a part in that. And so it's really just trying to figure out what is the best combination in order to assist them as early as possible, helping them identify when there is an issue, because if it's normal to them, it's not considered an issue unless somebody helps them identify it as such, to say, hey, you shouldn't be treated that way. Hey, a friend is somebody who cares for you, not hurts you, So we have to start teaching early, in order for them to identify these feelings in order to self-regulate their emotions.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So I don't know if you mentioned this, but could you share with the board the timeline of when you think the surveys will be administered?
Sure. Do you want me to go through it?
Yeah, go.
I'm like in it
I actually
right now.
have the timeline here.
So in 2 weeks, we'll be surveying the new cohort of sixth graders. And we will, the same screener again with them, so same questions as in the survey. We will then survey those sixth graders again in the spring, probably in late April. So we'll have 2 waves from the new sixth grade cohort. And then we'll also start following the sixth graders last year into seventh grade. And we'll do that in early November. And then again in late April, early May of next year. We will launch the parent survey probably at the beginning of November. That'll be for all 6th and 7th grade parents and family members. And then we will assess teachers and staff for 6th and 7th grade probably in November as well. So I will be very tired in November, but that is when a lot of that will be launching.
And in addition, we are planning to present to staff and students. So we want to have a parent, what do we call it?
Parent and community
Parent
night.
and community night, so that we can present the information for those who want to hear the information. Because we find it very important to provide the information in-house first, because we are presenting at NAMI, which is the National Association of Mental Illness, October 19th. So we are presenting. We want to provide the information in-house in our community first, before going outside and presenting to others. And what else is there? Is that the last thing? Man, we got a long timeline. Yeah, that's pretty much it, all the way through November. We also want to present to the PTSA as well. That's another avenue in which we want to do as well.
Ruth Ann?
I'm very interested in this survey. When you are ready to launch, will you send it to us through email so we can see just what all the questions are?
Happy to.
Sure. And maybe we can help you along that way, as well. Maybe we'll see something and say, oh, hey, can you add in this type of a question?
That would be great.
since I don't know what the survey is all about, when you started this process, and since you're not identifying actually the individuals that are doing the surveys, are there questions on there as to what their home life is? Are they in 2-parent homes, 1-parent homes, not in any parent home? Are they homeless, so on and so forth? Was that?
Yes.
Well, by the time, I can't read it up there because I don't have my driving glasses on. And it is, doing the bright colors instead of pastels really makes it muted, and even with as, as tough as these are magnified, I really can't read that from here. So, that's what, I'm going on my slide thing instead of doing this type of thing. So, oops, I'm sorry you had it open. Oh, in there, okay.
And another thing I want to point out too, and that we found important to identify as well, is gender identification, because that makes a difference as well. We have a lot of students who identify themselves as various genders, and we wanted to be respectful to that, to the students, as well as combining that with mental health concerns or issues, if there are any. Any other questions?
All right, yes, any other questions?
Oh, also, are you looking at, is there a question on there that identifies who's already been in the Urbana school system up until they are taking this, this survey? I mean, have they been with us? Does that type of thing figure in at all on what you might expect the results to be?
I think it's a really important question to add, so thank you.
Okay, yay.
All right. Especially for your in your 7th grade level, to know if they were part of the school the year before.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good one. And we're trying to keep it as short as possible. It's already very long. We actually cut out, how many was it, 21 questions
Yep.
or something?
We bring fruit snacks and juice boxes,
Yeah.
though, so they're happy most of the time,
Yeah.
so.
So, that's very good.
All right.
And we just want to thank all of you all, and especially our Urbana Middle School staff, because, we all work hard together. And in order to make this a success, the teachers have been very wonderful in helping support, because we have to go into one classroom all day in order to get the survey completed. So we just appreciate everybody's support and togetherness in order to get this done so we can best serve our students.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Very much.
Okay, our third and final study topic for this evening is school resource officer presentations. So it looks like we have the mayor, the chief, the assistant chief, who is an Urbana High School grad. Hi, Richie. I should call him Rich now. And our mayor.
We don't all need to sit exactly. We're going to kind of come up with one in the middle of the line.
Rich Searles was, Richie, what, sorry.
That's right, my mom still
I'm
calls
so
me that,
sorry.
That's right.
Hey, Lori, can you go
What
back
year did you graduate?
1993.
back
There
to
you go.
Banny? That's on like slide 4.
You got to back this up somehow. You got me.
Perfect.
There we go.
So we have Chief Seraphin here tonight and Deputy Chief Searles. It's a promotion there, so we want to thank both of you for coming. And also, did the mayor move up too, or? Oh, she's behind. Oh, there she's hiding. We'll also have Dr. Wimel kind of come up toward the front because he'll have a slide, and Michelle Robinson, who we'll introduce you to in just a few minutes. So as you know, I know we've been talking about this a little bit in open session as we've talked about the budget around, our budget is very tight, as is the city of Urbana's, and so we have been extremely blessed for the last 26 years that the city has been able to provide a school resource officer to us at our high school halftime, which Chief Seraphin will get into those details, but as we all are hitting tight belts and tightening up our budgets, this is an area where the city has reached out to us this past spring and said that this is something they would like to enter into a different financial collaboration in terms of we still are going to collaborate and work really closely together, but shifting the fiscal costs to the district level. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So that has been on your radar for the past several months actually. So I'll turn it over to Chief Serafin. We're going to kind of do a collaborative presentation here. I'm going to stay up here instead of kind of bopping back and forth. And we'll just share our slides. We're going to talk a little bit about the timeline of how we ended up here and talk about the model of where we'd like to go.
Okay, good. My name's Bryant Serafin. I am the Urbana Police Chief. Is this working okay?
Yes.
She said I could get up and walk around with
You
it, but I
can.
thought I
You can
would
be
try
very-
to
he
be
likes to
more.
get up and down, so he can-
Well, as we prepared this, I was all over her office, so.
Yes.
I just want to start by saying this isn't just a financial, this is sort of a reworking of the model. And I think that's super important for us to sort of keep track. I think some of you've seen the slides too, and so I will kind of flesh this out just a little bit. Although there's a couple of policemen who say they were SROs in the 1970s, it seems a bit sketchy. So we're declaring the official modern era of the school resource officer. Started at Urbana in 1993. To put that in perspective, I've been at the police department the longest, and I didn't start till 1994. So this has been going on for my entire career, at least at this model. It's been built as a halftime model, and that's probably a bit of an oversimplification due to work hours and cases and things. It gets maybe a little bit, some weeks might be 3/4 time, other weeks might be 1/4 time. Troy Phillips was the first recognized SRO in 1993, and we've had 11 since then. I do like to point out at this point that current City of Champaign Police Chief Anthony Cobb was indeed an SRO when he worked for Urbana many, many years ago. When we did this, the department elected to assign this person to the investigations division. That meant they were a half-time detective and a half-time SRO. They had both adult and juvenile cases, although they focused predominantly on those juvenile cases. But they did have then, with the task of being a detective comes on call time and other things. And as other school staff might know, when we had a murder or we have something, that SRO is pulled from some of their SRO responsibilities and is helping with the detectives. As a result of their assignment, they've always worn civilian clothes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And as she said, the police department since 1993 has funded this halftime position exclusively. There is some overtime that gets involved in here a little bit with report writing and some other things, and the city has paid for that as well. I don't want to confuse this with like athletic details or something when we have multiple officers at a basketball game or a football game. That's a shared formula. In spring of 2018, the district announced a new philosophy, and having been there for a while, I realized it was going to be a very big change. And I know because I was in our detective bureau for 16 of my 25 years, and I spent 9 years as a lieutenant investigations overseeing the school resource officer position. And we immediately had some concerns with regards to not having that strong dean system there, because we knew that helped us be able to sort of do this with just a half-time person. And then that fall, we saw an increase in a variety of misbehaviors, some things minor, whether it was just not going to class, being rude and hanging out in the hallway the whole time and whatnot. And then we had things that obviously increased where we needed police involvement. I pulled out my notes, realized it was my birthday on September 21st last year. School resource officer Jeff Steinberg, with his supervisor at the time, Lieutenant Rich Searles, came over and said, we have to talk about the schools. And that was the first time that it came to a head for us as the police agency. What are we going to do? I will say that the SRO was concerned about how busy he was. And so was the rest of the community, because it was shortly thereafter, at about that same time, we had a large town hall meeting at Urbana High School, and the mayor and I both attended that meeting, and there were a variety of families and parents that came forward with a lot of concerns about what was going on at both middle school and high school. Shortly after that meeting, we then met with school staff, and we then, for the month of September, said, okay, we will ratchet the school resource officer up full-time. We will have him set aside his other duties, and he will, for October, be at the school full-time, trying to keep both schools under control. And so we were able to sort of limp that along through October, and then we sort of entered into the holiday season, and we were able to make it work, I guess, for that amount of time. February was what I will call a flashpoint in our involvement in our behavior issues at the school. Many of you know about the rather large fight that occurred. We ended up with 11 total arrests out of that. A juvenile injured. We had an ambulance ride. We had a teacher injury. We had police cars, double digits from all the local agencies who had to arrive to try and sort this and I guess keep the peace and sort of get everything back going the right direction. I was here the night the school board meeting, as was the mayor. And we both were here when it was standing room only, and the fire marshal was here with his clicker, making sure that we could keep the building safe. And we then developed, coming out of that was a second plan, where we were going to now have the school resource officer. He will go up to 3/4 time, and then we had Mondays and Fridays where we were filling an officer with overtime for both of those. And the idea was so that we could have a police officer at all times at Urbana High School. They could, and I couldn't speak to how often exactly they went over to the middle school, but we wanted somebody dedicated. Part of that was because of this community outcry. And it was one of the rare times, and I was the acting chief of police at the time, but we had stakeholders in the community, mostly parents, that are calling and leaving me voicemail saying, what are you doing to keep my kids safe? And so the solution we came up with, at least temporarily, was to come up with this sort of patchwork program from February through May. I then called interim superintendent Preston Williams, and I asked him, I said, Preston, I think it's time we rework the model that we're using and how we're doing this here. I said, what do you think? And he replied, it's past time. So, knowing that I had at least some backing from him, I then approached him. We had conversations with both Joe Wiemelt of the middle school and Dolores Brown of the high school, and we began to start having this, talking about what you see, what you think about full-time, one in each school, to try and stop this sort of behavior from happening. They both agreed, and we begin to sort of, at this point now, as we're moving into the spring, knowing that we have a superintendent search and whatnot, that sort of slowed things a touch. But we knew that we had the backing of the staff, and so we wanted to come as Urbana Better Together, but the police department and the school district wanting to have this joint effort. The last point before I hand it over is just to comment on our current reality. And if you read the newspaper over the weekend, you'll see the increase of gun violence, and especially with our youth. We've had some requests. We've looked at the data. We've cut it 3 different ways, and have our methodology, at least in 2019, we have an increase with youth involved in guns. So I just wanted to say that because that's part of what we're dealing with here. It's unfortunate, but it is part of that current reality.
Okay, and so as Chief mentioned, this is about the time that I entered on the scene, so I was really lucky. Since I was named early enough, I was able to spend a little time with the interim administrative team. So Dr. Williams had me, as he kind of passed the torch of this discussion on to me, I came over and met with the chief and at the time Lieutenant Searles. And we had a conversation about what was currently happening and what we needed to do to continue to explore continuing the support at the middle school and high school. I also met with Dr. Wiemelt, and at that time we did not have a high school principal, but so I had several members of the administrative team from Urbana High School meet with us as well, and some of Dr. Wiemelt's team around how the impact of the support, as Chief said, that we limped along with from February through May, and what that looked like, and how we were able to utilize the support that we were so graciously given by UPD through the end of the school year. So Carol Baker and I, after Dr. Williams kind of passed that torch on to me, and I met with the UPD team, we went over to begin exploring the costs associated with this. And as you guys know, we've already kind of, I'll talk about that maybe at the end. We've put those costs in our ed fund, but I'll add those at the end of the slide. So, so continuing into August, one of my conversations that I'll remember with the chief is, you know, at the time, I had not had an opportunity to meet with the board. We'd not had any public discussions about this model, and I knew we wouldn't be able to do that, right, like before school started. So I went back to the chief and Lieutenant Searles and said, what can we do? Because school starts August 19th, and we need to have a plan. And so the chief went back to the mayor, and they agreed that although we not had an approved model and we don't have an intergovernmental agreement, and we've not figured out dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, that they were going to make sure that we had what we needed to start school, and that we knew that our teachers would feel supported, our administrators would feel supported, and that they would do what they needed to do to make sure we had someone at both campuses, which they did that, and we were very gracious. I think it has been a great help to the positive start to the school year that we've had. So that was the end of August. And again, that 5-day presence continued at the high school. And as Chief mentioned, we have that Monday, Friday model. I know there's some Mondays and Fridays we don't have anyone, but I know they do the best that they can to make sure that those are covered. And then we'll introduce Michelle here in a minute, but in the last couple of weeks we were able to bring Michelle in. We started the year off covering UMS with overtime. Mm-hmm. Which was kind of, again, piecemeal, right. You know, when we could, and when, you know, when people take that, we can't control that. But again, they said we're committed to this, and they posted that position, and we were able to find, I would say, almost the perfect person, so to do that job. So, and lastly, UPD. Oh, I just said that. We began that search, and we've selected someone. So going back to kind of, I'll go back one more. I want to say one more thing about the budget. We didn't include, you know, every penny. We have talked about that in Carol's budget, that right now we have that $275,000 amount. That's broken down, and I can give you guys, you know, more of a breakdown. But that is the 4 categories that includes is salary and benefits, which is everything from insurance, uniforms and equipment, professional development. Deputy Chief is going to talk about some training opportunities here in a minute. While these officers would continue to work in our schools, they are first and foremost Urbana police officers. So, you know, we will be paying their salaries and insurance and benefits and all the things that their union requires them to have, but they will be in our schools and also part of our community. You know, as Michelle has already stepped in and become part of the UMS community, they're part of kind of both worlds. So I know we've had some discussion here about, you know, what are the other options around paying for the school resource officer. So I think this year we just decided, because we weren't quite sure future-wise, you know, where our agreement is going to take us, that we were going to put that in the ed fund. I know there's some grants. A board member just sent me a link last night to some grants. There was a threat assessment. What was it? Public Law 101-0455. New legislation just in September. So Carol and I did a little research around that. I've been to a couple superintendent seminars around it, and it is an opportunity for the. This would be a countywide effort. I think there's a little interest among some of the other superintendents in our region to explore, but this would be going out again for another levy, and we would be able to levy health, life, safety bonds to pay for SRO and for other mental health supports. So I think districts pay for their SROs in different ways. So I did a little polling around and found out what other districts do. So some districts are paying for their SROs through their life safety money, or tort, and O&M and Ed Fund. So we elected to cover this through the Ed Fund this year, and then next year we can explore other options. So I'll keep you posted if that countywide levy gains any traction. I think just based on the last superintendent ROE meeting that I was at, when it came up, I think, nobody is jumping up and down about the idea of going out for another levy. However, what we would be able to get in terms of, we just heard Dr. Bivens talk about mental health needs, and what we would be able to get in return for the work that would be required to go out for a levy kind of outweighs the work that it might take to put in. So I'll keep you posted if that develops or gains any traction in our region with our regional superintendent group. But again, I just wanted to put out the budget costs that we've kind of already talked about that a little bit, but if you want more information, I have it and I can share that with you as a board. Now we're going to talk about the SRO triad model.
All right, my name is Rich Searles. Until this past Friday, I was a lieutenant in charge of the investigations division, and as of yesterday, I became the deputy chief. So happy day 2 to me, I guess. Thank you, appreciate it. So kind of what I'm going to get into is some nuts and bolts of the SRO stuff. So the first thing that we should probably talk about is what's referred to as the triad model. And the triad model is subscribed to by the police department. It's recommended by the National Association of School Resource Officers. And the easiest way to sort of conceptualize it is that of a 3-legged stool. The first leg is that of a teacher. The school resource officer can provide instruction on a myriad of subjects: driver's education, civics, legal topics, personal safety, social media, you name it. The second leg would be that of an informal counselor, and it's not just for the students, it would be for the staff, it would be for the teachers. Police officers, through their normal course of duties, learn about lots of services and organizations and procedures, and so they can provide advice on how to navigate some of those things. So that's important. And then, of course, the last one is that of a law enforcement officer. Of course, that includes things like deterring crime and violence. But it also includes things like protecting people that are in a particular building. So that's sort of a brief overview of the triad model, which again we subscribe to. So the next thing that we should probably talk about is sort of what are some of the goals of the school resource officers. And I'd like to say that I came up with these first 4 bullet points on my own, but they are shamelessly stolen from National Association of School Resource Officers. But they hold true for us. Provide a safe learning environment for the schools, for everyone. Provide valuable resources to staff members. Foster positive relationships with the youth and develop strategies to resolve issues. Those all hold true. It sounds like Officer Robinson has at least impacted one person since her name has already been invoked once this evening. So it sounds like she is at least making progress on those things. So one of the questions you might ask is, well, how do you plan on training these officers? Well, because we're starting in the middle of the school year, we would obviously start with in-house training. We have former SROs. Matt Bain was a resource officer at the high school. He was recently promoted from being a detective sergeant. Sergeant Tim McNaught, Sergeant Corey Coker. We have a number of former school resource officers still on staff at the police department, and so we can leverage their experience and their relationships and their training to help train up the new SROs. The next would be a basic SRO class. The National Association of School Resource Officers holds classes all over the country, and we can identify classes to send an SRO to a basic class. And of course, there's more advanced training. There's a class that they just call Advanced SRO, and then there's more specialized training, things like adolescent mental health, for example. So that's sort of what we're talking about with the training aspect. One of the things I think is important for me to let you all know about is a recommended level of school resource officers. And NASRO recommends 1 per 1,000 students or 1 per building. Prior to recent history, our 1/2 model did not meet either one of those recommendations. So, since we're talking about ratios, let's talk about where we're at. So these numbers are from the Sheriff's Office. They service St. Joe and Unity. They have 2 full-time school resource officers for a total of just a little over 3,000 students. So their ratio is 1 per about 1,500 students. The Champaign Police Department has 5 full-time SROs. They take care of about 4,800 students, so their ratio is just under 1,000 at 962. Rantoul's got 2 for 2,500 students, so that gets you a ratio of 1 to 1,250. Our old model had a ratio of 1 to 4,322, and with this new model, the ratio would fall in line both by for per capita and by the building of 1 for every 1,081 students.
And on that note, we're going to play a quick game of musical chairs.
Right.
So, would you like to introduce yourself first? Go ahead.
I'm Officer Michelle Robinson. I was born and raised here in Urbana. I went to Leal School, then the Urbana Middle School, and then went to Urbana High School until 10th grade and actually graduated from Judah Christian. My mom was an executive director of a mental health center growing up. My father was chief investigator for the Champaign County State's Attorney's Office for 33 years. So I have a law enforcement background and a mental health background. I have education, mental health experience. I've been a police officer. I'm coming up to my 10th year. I've been patrolling the entire time. The last 10 years, I have participated in Risk Watch, which is a lot of the students know me from the elementary schools coming in and teaching safety, gun safety. They kind of recognize me from being in and out pretty much growing up through the elementary schools. I'm CIT trained, which means I'm a crisis officer. So I also specialize in mental health. So I can, a lot, when they talk about anxiety, anxiety is a very big thing in school, and it comes down to the FOMO code and also bullying that they deal with daily at the school. That's a little bit about my background.
So we don't refer to her as Officer Robinson at UMS. We refer to her as Miss Robinson because she is definitely a member of our community and our family. She is Miss Robinson because one of the things that in our initial conversations that we had over the last school year and this summer was that as principal, I didn't want just a police officer. And I don't mean that in any kind of negative way towards the Urbana Police. I wanted a staff member, right? I wanted someone as a part of our community because I believe the relationship is really important for a police officer, a school resource officer to have in our school. So Mrs. Robinson has been to our staff meetings, our professional development sessions. A day in the life, we won't go line by line here, but she is just like a lot of our other staff members in a lot of ways, and in some ways is a police officer. But does a lot of really amazing work already with staff and with families and with students. And so students are already building relationships with her that more quickly than I even expected, right? And so we were just talking about that today. Some of our kids that we love dearly, that give us a run for our money sometimes and help us earn our paychecks, are already connecting with her and going to her with questions and comments and help giving us some tips on things that may be going on between students or in the community, things like that. And so just some important highlights to talk about the day in the life of the UMS SRO would be the staff collaboration, the supporting hallways, the morning time. She has a really good sense about her, right, in regards to just kind of being at the front door as students come in, greeting students, can kind of take a read of the pulse, right, of the building when students come in, especially Monday mornings. That's really important. I try to do that myself, to be very visible on Monday mornings and Friday afternoons, because the weekends are always unpredictable what may come into the building and or leave the building, right? And so She's been very important in that area. Also working across different higher risk areas. So when Dr. Bivens, Dr. Garth shared some of the areas where students feel less safe at UMS or around UMS is during more of the unstructured times, right? So PE, where there's more students in one space than a typical classroom, morning entry time, lunchtime, dismissal time. So we strategically have Ms. Robinson and other staff members in certain areas to support that, right? And so this is just a real quick overview. One of the other pieces I'll let her speak a little bit more about is the relationship with the Youth Assessment Center, which is an important relationship that in the past couple years we haven't had as strong as we wanted to support our students who have had struggles either at UMS or outside in the community. And so being able to link up with case managers, caseworkers from the Youth Assessment Center on Thursdays, meeting with students, meeting with families, having that direct connection between Urbana Middle School and the Youth Assessment Center is really, really important. And I just want to highlight that in speaking way back last year and talking about a new model for the SRO, is I was very surprised coming in as principal the way in which a school resource officer or a police officer can help de-escalate a situation, especially with parents. So parents come in and that's their baby and something's going on with their baby. They want us to take it as, as serious as any other situation, which we do. When they feel like it's being heard by everyone and by a school resource officer in particular, all the anxiety levels and fear levels come down from parents, more so than I expected. I was surprised by that. And so it has been a huge help in us just kind of working through situations as they arise, because they arise every day, right? With 1,000 adolescents in one spot, there's going to be something going on every day. And it's just been a huge help thus far throughout the school year in those areas.
So I work with Maria, who is a case manager with the Youth Assessment Center. Maria is the Urbana case manager. She not only works with juveniles that have been sent to her for criminal activity, but also that have been referred to her through the school. The Youth Assessment Center is not just I call it more of like almost rehabilitation program, a redirective program for juveniles. It also helps parents get the resources that they need. One of the things that we do is every Thursday, she comes in, we meet for about an hour, and then we pull each one of the children out that are on station adjustments. We not only just check up on them and see how they're doing, the other thing that we like to do is we educate them on a lot of basically the crime that they're there for. A lot of these children do not understand what they have done wrong. A lot of these children especially when it comes to harming others, do not have the empathy that you would assume that they should have. One of the things that I like to do is kind of redirect them and teach them, and explain to them where it can lead. From there, recommendations that even Maria hasn't, one of the biggest things is when children commit crimes out in the community or even at the school and need to be redirected to the Youth Assessment Center, I'm very big on they need to see some kind of counseling. A lot of times children can be crying out for help. There's a background. You have to be able to look at all of what's going on, not just the person in front of you, but what's their home life like? What are they going to at night? Why are they bringing this to school? The biggest thing is Monday, a lot of things go on over the weekend that we don't know about, and then they all get together, and social media, joys, it carries into the school every Monday, and a lot of times overnight. Back in our day, you said it face-to-face. Nowadays, everything's on social media, and then they talk, and then they get together. So those are the kinds of things that we do with the Youth Assessment Center. I know Dr. Bivens and I have worked on, there's several students that need to be directed also to the Youth Assessment Center. Part of the problem is that families do not take it as seriously when a school refers them as they would if a police department does. One of the things that I can do is try to step in and carry on a relationship with the parents and try to convince them and work with them to make this happen. The good news is now that I'm in the school and I work with Maria, a lot of these children can't make it there because of transportation or work with families. We can actually do it within the school now. So it helps with better success if we need be. And it also allows us to collaborate together and get them everything that they need to assist.
The last thing, I just pulled this model back up because I think it's really important to emphasize the 3 areas of the triad model. And we've seen that in full go with Ms. Robinson at UMS already, and I've been extremely impressed. Dr. Bivens mentioned this earlier around these areas of teaching and counseling, because we've seen already the benefits from that. Some students having to learn and about some of the dangers of some of this internet, social media usage, and learning it from Ms. Robinson in a teachable moment, a counseling moment, instead of being arrested outside of school, families have been very thankful for that already, and so have we as employees, and so the children will too one day. They will look back and be very appreciative of that. So that's what we have for a day in the life of UMS SRO.
And so as they play musical chairs again, Deputy Chief is going to talk a little bit about UHS SRO, which is a model we're more familiar with, right? I mean, the UMS piece is a lot newer to us, so that's why we invited Dr. Weemel and Michelle, Ms. Robinson, to come and talk tonight instead of the high school team. But again, the Deputy Chief did talk to, he's mentioned several of our previous UHS SROs who, if you want to switch your slides, Rich, okay, who have shared some strategies of things that they've been using at high school.
Yeah, so I reached out to Lieutenant Bain, who was on jury duty last week, and I said, since you have so much time on your hand, can you jot down in a few minutes and tell me what you did? And I just gave him a Thursday. And so he explained, and I'm not going to read it verbatim, but this is what he explained his day was like on a Thursday. It started with staff meetings where they discussed specific issues in the school with specific students and what was going on and different problems and different opportunities and how to make things better in the school. And then he would go and do an in-person check-in with lots of different staff members and ask them if they needed anything. Was there something that they needed help resolving? Maybe it was a theft of a cell phone or something like that, or maybe there was a disagreement brewing amongst a couple kids, social media issues, things like that. And then he would basically problem solve those issues that they gave to him. And of course, he continued his check-ins with hall monitors, and he'd walk the halls, and he'd talk to the kids, and he'd talk to the staff, and in the process of finding out what was going on, he would continue to build those relationships. Lieutenant Bain always made a point to be present in all 3 lunch periods. He would take an opportunity to do his documentation because the police department does require documentation, quite a lot of it actually. And then he might have a presentation in the afternoon to driver's ed or an English class or any other requests that might have come in. And he'd end out the day with outside dismissal, talking with students, talking with staff, and again, problem solving as he was able. So this is what Lieutenant Bain gave me. I hold it to be true as well based on my my experience with the SRO program at the high school. So.
Is he currently the SRO?
No, so right now our SRO at the high school is a detective named Darren McCartney. He's also an Urbana high school graduate, and he employs basically the same sort of model. Lieutenant Bain trained Detective McCartney, so the same sorts of things are happening right now.
Okay, are they both full-time or part-time right now?
So we have one high school SRO, and he is half-time, and that is Darren McCartney.
Okay.
Now, we have ramped up his schedule to 3 days a week. He has to write reports at some point, so he works a 4 10-hour schedule.
Okay.
So his last day, the 4th day, he does reports. So he works three days full-time in the high school, and then the Monday, Fridays that Ms. Ivory Tatum referenced earlier, with overtime. So we've got full-time coverage in the high school right now, but Darren he's 3/4 time based on his schedule in the high school.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the next slide in Officer Robinson completely stole my thunder on the act, so I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this. But I think it's important to have a conversation about some fears that folks have that, well, the SRO is really just intended to arrest our kids and send them to prison. That couldn't be further from the truth. So NASRO, the practice is to not arrest students for disciplinary issues. That's not what we do. That's part of the model. It's explicitly said that that's not the world we get involved in. That discipline of students, that's up to the principals, right? In the administration. So what an SRO was really intended to do is actually keep kids out of the justice system by having conversations, by developing relationships, by going down these roads that sometimes other people might not have experience in, and a police officer might. NASRO has done some research, and they found that arrest rates have actually gone down with school resource officers. So locally, let's talk about some alternatives to the justice system. The first is that, oftentimes incidents are handled by the school or the district administration. You don't need an SRO every time, right? So the next thing would be that an SRO would handle something informally. Listen here, little Johnny, you can't do that, and this is why. Well, maybe that doesn't work, and so the SRO might have to handle it more formally. Maybe there's a police report written or something. And that's where things like the Youth Assessment Center come into play. Now, some people think that the Youth Assessment Center is just a sort of a criminal justice entity, and as Officer Robinson pretty eloquently explained, it is more than that. It's linkage to services, it's counseling, it's drug and alcohol referrals. It's a number of different things that they do. Now, yeah, they do get involved in some aspects of the criminal justice system. They issue things called station adjustments, which is basically like a police officer enforced probation. It's more of an informal probation. And the whole point behind that is to keep criminal cases from going to court so a child is adjudicated as delinquent. That's the whole point behind it. So they engage in those station adjustments. The other thing that we've got in place is that our state's attorney's office review these cases, and they have to decide whether or not they're going to prosecute these cases with a juvenile delinquency petition. And of course, the last bullet point, and I've got 7 or 8 different things written down for this, is we've had some state legislative changes regarding juvenile justice. So for example, the age of juveniles has been raised from 17 to 18. So we've got another year of being a juvenile. The legislature is pushing things like community-based sentences. They've increased the mandates for judges to send kids to the Department of Juvenile Justice. There's been changes to the Miranda laws. There's been changes to police procedural laws regarding attorneys and mandatory recordings. And there was a new law that just passed regarding interviews of children in school buildings by police officers. So there's a number of different things. And, when we were talking about this collectively, one of the things we were talking about, and the chief referenced this, was sort of a funnel. We start with a lot of stuff at the beginning, and by the end of the funnel, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about this most serious crimes, the most serious incidents, and there's been all these different things along the way. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
And a lot of these same tiers have occurred with our patrol officers as well. So this is not a foreign concept. The idea of when I started, I think everybody went to the juvenile detention center, whether you offer curfew or whatever, murder. Everybody went up. Nowadays, it's not like that. There is this sort of funneling of systems and peeling kids off and trying to keep them out of the system. And the Juvenile Court Act requires that for the station adjustments. And that sort of, so those occur before the state's attorney were to file charges and officially get them into the justice system. So, and one other point as we get ready to the discussion topics, I did want to mention, and everyone has done a great job with this tonight as far as explaining this, but that sort of, there are 2 big things that I wanted to take away, which is that relationship building and the impact of the community on the schools. And I didn't know that I fully grasped that when I started, but that relationship, the fact that after I don't know, a couple of weeks. They already know Ms. Robinson, and she's engaged. Is tremendous. It's positive. I'm very happy to hear that. And the other piece is that, again, the school and that community, and what happens in 7th grade algebra or 7th hour algebra on a Friday spills out into the community, and what happens out on Sunday night in front of somebody's house can come into algebra on Monday morning, and those kinds of things, and having that connection, I think is huge. And so I'm very glad with how this is, at least the pilot's going.
Okay, so before we, I guess I want to pause a moment. I do have a couple discussion topics that I'd like to engage the board and with UPD collaboratively on these last two thoughts. But before we do that, what questions do you have specifically about the model and what we've talked about already in terms of the full-time person at the high school, the full-time person at the middle school, and then we can kind of go back and have our discussion around a couple specific things. So,
I'd be curious, would the cost of both of those be a one lump cost, or would we separate it out between the high school and the middle school?
So right now we have them lumped together, and we just kind of have them. Right now, the city is covering most of the costs. We're covering the overtime that happens on Monday and Friday, and they're covering everything else until we come up with a plan, an agreement of kind of what we're going to do. We don't have anything written down, which is why they're here tonight, because we will eventually enter into a intergovernmental agreement around who's going to do what and for how long we're going to do it. So we're already kind of partially into the year, and the city is still covering the vast majority of the costs associated with this for right now. For the future, the rest of the year will be, once we decide what we're going to do, will be lumped together in our ed fund. The city is also this year, as we transition over, taking over some one-time costs too, like the startup costs around the vehicle and some other things that they're going to kind of help us transition into this for the school year, this partial year.
Now, I see Ms. Robinson has a modified uniform. What about
So we're going to
the
talk
person
about that
at
in a
the-
minute. Yeah, we're going to talk
Okay.
about that in a little bit.
Okay.
I kind of want to have her show and tell. So.
Okay, no problem.
So around the model, though, what specifics? Are there questions that you have about the time? Or I know we've talked a lot about the relationship and the model around how we want to use the SRO.
I was just curious. What is I like the student to SRO ratio that you put in here. What exactly is our numbers at the high school and at the middle school currently? Do you know?
So can you go back to that slide?
I sure can.
Yeah, so it's on
Wait, hold on.
there. In the packet that you received.
Yeah, I didn't see Urbana High School.
So the
on
middle
there, so I
school
didn't know.
is about 1,000, whoops, my computer just did something funny, 967. And these are numbers as of Friday. And the high school was 1194. So those two numbers together, that's the 2,161.
Okay.
I don't know if this falls into like model discussion, but do the SROs discuss, are they in communication with other districts? I mean, I know some of this stuff spills over across the Wright Street and, information that you can share to help nip things in the bud or de-escalate things that might happen, and people have neighbors and friends in Champaign. Does that help? Do you practice that regularly?
So the short answer to your question is yes, they do. So just sort of kind of an overview on Urbana police operations, there's a couple things that happen. There's three divisions, patrol, investigations, and services, but the two you care about are patrol and investigations. One of the things that the investigations division does every morning is read every report that was authored in the last 24 hours. So there's a lot of information sort of being synthesized at kind of an old table with a bunch of detectives sitting around making fun of each other and reading police reports. And so there's opportunities to leverage that sort of funnel of information. And so oftentimes I'll be sitting there and I'll read reports and I'll read something and I'll throw it at Darren and say, you need to know about this, because Darren's the high school resource officer. So yes, there's an opportunity to leverage that information with the police reports. In terms of the patrol division and patrol officers, there's constant communication between patrol officers, whether it's through laptops in squad cars or internal message boards, email, and so we're constantly communicating, sending out photos. Does anybody know this person? They were involved in this, or just FYI, there was a big fight here. Susie's the problem if it comes up again. So that collaboration between different police divisions already exists.
Okay.
So yeah,
What
absolutely.
about across Wright Street, though, and including the University of Illinois?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm constantly in communication with, in my previous position with the lieutenant in charge of the Champaign Police Department Investigations Division, the U of I, the Sheriff's Office. We're always talking. We're always sharing information because, as Chief Seraphin and Chief Cobb like to say, crime doesn't stop at Wright Street, and it works both ways. So yes, there's opportunities there.
And you'll clearly see that, especially if we can, I think the new model will be even more helpful with that, because the middle school kids at Edison, wait a minute, they're coming, and so there's clearly this back and forth. Hey, I know that so-and-so's cousin is over there. Call the high school tonight because, the football game is coming up, and so, we do a lot of coordination, especially in those bigger events.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Well, I guess, I appreciate the opportunity to have sort of a public discussion about our sort of philosophical belief about SROs. The last time in my mind that we did this, when we weren't reacting to an urgent situation, was in 2016 when the Champaign County Racial Justice Task Force was here, and we talked about several of their recommendations, including SROs in our school. So I appreciate this because it's long overdue that we talk about that. So I have kind of a long, but all related to tonight's discussion that I'd like to share. One is just to start off by saying that I absolutely share our district's concern for student and faculty safety. I mean, that's utmost. Last year's fight in February was greatly disturbing, as we all know, and I supported at that time the quick changes to our SRO presence in our schools because I felt the circumstances at the time warranted it. And those circumstances, as you know, included the dramatic changes at both the middle school and high school in our approach to discipline that were changes that were not well thought out or well implemented. Additional circumstances that led to that very unsettled school environment last year, especially at the Urbana High School, had to do with the large number of new administrators at the high school who, in my view, received too little support and training to do their jobs well. So the result of those circumstances, combined with that volatile situation in the community in the summer of 2018 that involved many of our youth, contributed, in my mind, to this perfect storm, which culminated in that February mayhem. Up until that February fight, we've had a half-time SRO in our district for 26 years, serving both of our schools. The number of serious behavior problems has been on a steady decline in my 10 years on the school board. And that's been true because we've invested in trained educators who know our students, and we invested in effective practices such as our restorative practices that help to diffuse serious conflicts. I recognize the challenge of having a half-time SRO for the school district and for the police department, and because of that challenge of having a half-time who's not real, has to do too many different things, I can certainly support employing a single full-time SRO to be shared between the two schools. I can't, however, justify basically quadrupling our SRO presence, going from a half-time to full-time, for a couple reasons. I mean, the main one is the funds that we would allocate to quadrupling our SRO presence are funds that would be unavailable to hire additional trained educators, social workers, and counselors who are the professionals who know our students best, who are the ones who develop those important relationships, and who are equipped to prevent serious conflicts from escalating. So a couple $100,000 that won't have to hire those important people. Also importantly, additional SROs will do nothing to address our disparity in discipline referrals, something that we know remains a serious district concern. And in fact, the research is a little bit muddied on this, but there is research that says that additional SROs can in fact lead to additional suspensions, expulsions, and criminalization of behavior, especially for our students of color. And I'm sure that's dependent on the SROs in the district, but that is absolutely a fact in many school districts. I recognize that our use of a half-time SRO the last 26 years has been very beneficial to us. That person has built relationships that help our students see law enforcement in a positive light. That's been a really good thing. The SRO has been an important conduit of information between the school and police, super important. And it's for that reason that I can absolutely support expanding a half-time to a full-time SRO to be shared between the two schools. However, the unusual confluence of events last year does not justify in my mind quadrupling our SRO presence in Urbana School District. I mean, I feel, and I really appreciate the presentation tonight, but in my mind, as I'm hearing about all the wonderful things that Ms. Robinson does, and I really appreciate your good work in our schools, I'm thinking about those are the things that our trained educators do as well, the people who are hired to work with our students.
Other board members?
I guess I'll counter Peggy a little bit and say that I am definitely in full support of full-time at both the middle school and the high school. I think it's important for us to make sure that we're reducing our campus disruptions. I like the presentation and the information that was given on the fact that these SROs are beyond just being a police officer. I feel like they are helping with prevention. It's not just I'm here to look for unlawful behavior and send kids to jail. It's getting to know the students, it's being a part of the school team, it's working with people like Dr. Bivens, and preventing the crimes, the issues that we're seeing in the schools, and hopefully preventing the things that are happening in the community. And I think that when you split a person, it takes away from that progress, because they're not there daily. Kids, when they need people, they need people. And if this officer is, and it sounds like she's the perfect fit, we don't want 2 or 3 days to go by when she's not there, when that resource is not available. Because who knows what's going to happen in that 2 or 3 days. I mean, we are not blind to what's happening in our community. At least I'm not. I'm very aware. I'm very involved at the schools, and I've already this year seen a huge reduction in issues with behavioral disruptions at both the middle school and the high school level. And one of the things I'm really keen on doing is having conversations with the children and with the teachers. And I've heard several times, especially at the high school level, because I'm there more, that the presence makes a difference. And I just think as a board, we've got to figure out a way to make sure that our teachers are feeling safe, because if they're not feeling safe, they can't teach. We need to make sure that our children are feeling safe, because they're there to learn, and they can't learn if they're worried about what's going to happen in the hallway during passing period. So I'm very much myself in support of having a full-time at both levels, and getting creative and looking for grant money, because I believe it is out there, and I did share, one possibility that I found. But safety is of utmost concern and importance for us, and like I said, I can already kind of see it working already this year, and we're very appreciative of all the years that you've given us, SRO officers. That's a debt we cannot repay, but it is appreciated, and we do understand, that can't go on forever. So I think we need to really consider getting creative in how we can make this work and make sure that our teachers and our students are supported, and that's my thoughts.
And I'll let other board members chime in, but I know we've spent most of our time talking about just the day-to-day disruptions and minor and major behaviors in terms of student behavior, but what we haven't talked about is something you guys know I'm very passionate about, is school safety for intruders. I mean, I know Rich and I worked together on our last crisis committee, and, you know, we implemented together as basically a partnership to get our intruder drill model up and going several years ago. And Michelle is going to be our first line of defense for anything that happens at UMS, whether it's an intruder, whether it's just, you know, we heard about what happened at Clark Lindsay a week or two ago, whenever that was, 2 or 3 weeks ago. It helps me sleep better at night. It reassures me to know that we have a trained professional who is going to be our first go-to, who would be our first go-to at the middle school and at the high school, who's there every day. You know, so like if it's a Monday and Darren's not there, and, you know, no one's at the middle school, and someone were to enter our school with bad intentions, and someone entering our school to do harm, then I feel better at night knowing that one of our wonderful UPD officers would be there to be that first line. I know you guys can speak to that better than I can, but I know that's something that is important to our staff. It's important that our students are prepared and know what to do in those situations. And I think I'm proud of the fact that Urbana has been a trendsetter in stepping out there with the intruder drills and involving students and staff in that really important decision making around what do I do in those situations. So anyway, I know
Yeah,
you
and
probably
we
wanna say
just
something.
retrained the department through that. We go out to the Elias Training Center, the old nursing home.
Mhm.
And there, matter of fact, after the most recent event, one of the officers commented, "Wow, it was just like training." I'm like, perfect, then the training was good, if that's what you thought. And I didn't have anything to do with putting on the training. We have people that do that. So, yes. With regards to Ms. Patton's comment, I just wanted to mention that, having been here for a while, the schools sort of ebb and flow, and there are times when, although we have only had a half-time officer assigned to the 2 schools, you didn't always see what was going on in the background. In 2004, I was in charge of our street crimes unit, and the schools were kind of messy at the end of the year, and so our 4-man team every day, when we came on duty, we would go to the high school to assist in dismissal. So there are times when there have been other things that have happened that we've dealt with to try to keep that model going.
I'd like to speak up. I was here before there were SROs, and was part of the discussion at this table when we first brought the first one, and I thought Cobb was the first one, so obviously the first one must not have been here too long. But some of the same, it was interesting because we adopted an SRO without much controversy in this community, unlike Unit 4 spent months and months and months with rooms full of people going over some of the issues of, you know, what's the intent of a police officer in the building? Is it to address? Is it that school to prison path, or what it is? And, you know, we had some of that discussion back then, but it wasn't much. We viewed more of the SRO as somebody who would be helpful. It was like the neighborhood officer who was in the school and who did everything possible to keep our students out of the justice system. And I think that's been Urbana's philosophy since day one. It certainly has been the school district's philosophy since day one about how to use the officer. We meaning the school district, we took our eyes off the ball a couple of years ago. I agree with Peggy that when we have high expectations of our students and we hold our students accountable to those high expectations, then the need for some of the activities of an SRO drop off. We lost track of that a little bit, and it culminated in last February. I agree with you that I think our halftime for both buildings has been adequate for a long time, but the community has changed. School hasn't changed, but this community has changed a lot. Some of the individuals that we had to do student discipline with last February are now in the criminal justice system, are now in, I think one or two of the individuals are now in prison. And it isn't anything that we did wrong at the building level, that we abandon our disciplinary actions. It's that some of the students are not, our disciplinary actions are not sufficient to meet those students' needs. I'll put it that way. And so I'm also in favor of increasing the amount. I'm going to go into another little step in that we've got a campus land use study that's underway. Part of what's driving that is external, outside the building, internal to the campus, but outside the building. Safety measures that I don't want to call it hardening of our campus, but it is in a little bit of a way hardening our campus, and we're going to spend a whole lot more money than we will on an SRO to implement that in order to have our buildings be as safe as the current county administrative building, or the current courthouse, or the current city building. Although city's got some work to do to keep somebody from driving through one of your doors. But you have to go up the steps to drive through the door. You guys have at our building. Somebody could drive through one of our doors without going up a step. I mean, it's just a straight shot right in the door, and could create all kinds of problems. If the presence of an SRO can keep us from having to further harden our buildings. It was just a year ago, folks, that we had people up in front of us yelling at us about installing metal detectors and wanding our students every morning.
More cameras.
And I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there because it makes our buildings look like prisons. And I don't want to go there. We don't have students that deserve that. We don't have students that need that. But maybe we need a little bit more attention to how the community has changed and what we need to do to protect not the students that are not the bad doers, but also to provide some assistance and help to students who could become our problem students. And I think that this process may be one. In your model, you have a lot of specialized training. I think what turned people off in other places has been the fact that people that have been given this job of SRO haven't always been sensitive to the needs of adolescents, and haven't really helped out with the idea of what a police officer is. That's not been the case in Urbana. I think universally Urbana from day one has been people that have been they've been police officers that have been very successful at relating to adolescents. And so if we move forward with this, I want to make sure that we keep that at the forefront, that it's not just the training that somebody's gone through, it's not just the degree they've got, but it's also got to be somebody that's got the right personality, the right feeling about them, the right ability to be able to look at young people as young adults and not as little kids that need to be pushed around. So that's pretty important to me. I had written down, you were better prepared, Peggy, than I am for this discussion. You always are. And I am jealous of the fact that you take the time to be able to come with written statements. And so I had written down safety protocols, and for the life of me, I'm trying to remember what the heck that is. But I think it does have to do with, in my years at the RPC, I was there when the Youth Assessment Center was started. And it actually started before that as a peer court situation before Youth Assessment Center came into being. I would like to see an aspect of our model be some involvement in our restorative justice practices more than what you stressed on the slides, and more in one of the early goals of the Youth Assessment Center was for the youth to understand the impact that they have on the victim. And sometimes that impact on the victim, and when there's a full realization of the impact on the victim, it is the most important way to get the youth to understand right from wrong. And so I'm hoping that becomes stressed just a little bit more in how we move this forward. So you are a combination social worker and officer, peace officer, and
Well, if you recall correctly, Officer Ms. Robinson actually addressed that point exactly, which is to say one of the things that she's working on is empathy. So you're right, it wasn't necessarily in the slides.
I'm not criticizing what you did tonight, Rich. I'm only just saying that as we move this forward, I think for our community to understand why we're taking this step, that needs to be stressed more than what it has been. Because there are parts of this community, not the evildoers, not necessarily, but sometimes a lot of the families of students that are not in trouble, that view a police officer's presence in the building as a negative, not as a positive.
Understood.
Despite the 23 years of it being a tremendous positive in our buildings. And so I just want to make sure we push that.
And, hold on, now that you've said that out loud and I've got it written down, when this room was filled with students and parents, teachers, administrators, and everything, after things kind of exploded, it was almost balanced about we need more presence, and we had the ones that were on high anxiety to not even have presence in the building at all. There were quite a few people that came before us that night and really expressed that. Is there any way now, after all these months, that we could be in contact with any of them to ask them if they even noticed, if it even affected them? Did they just go straight into school every day and everything was fine? Or did they still have something that was holding them back and really bothered them that there is a presence in the building? I'd like to know. We're the end game. I think the board, that we're the end game, that we need to talk to the stakeholders out there first and find out where they're at.
I mean,
They're the one, they're.
To that end, I was going to interrupt, but as the only board member up here with kids in both buildings, I think I've got more exposure to many of the parents and staff members in the buildings. The acclaim has been nearly universal to my ears. That's not a scientific study or survey by any means, but the feedback I'm getting back from parents is very, very, very positive with the changes this year.
Me too, and I'm in both schools.
I was going to say, you're at both schools.
And I'm talking to children as well. So.
As involved as I am with teenagers, the presence, whatever is happening this year, be it our staff, be it the increased SRO presence, but our schools are way different than they were a year ago. Kids are feeling much safer about being in the buildings. They feel like there's far less distractions from the learning environment. And I think part of it is the presence of, part of it is the steps we took jointly with the city last year to increase the presence so that those who thought they could get away with everything last year now understand that they can't. And be that our staff people, they've been here a year longer, lots of them are new, those relationships are starting to be built. I mean, things are beginning to happen. And my philosophy is going to feed into when we get to the discussion about uniform, which I see is on the next slide. And I'm also going to talk about Explorer Post when you get to that, which shouldn't surprise, shouldn't at least surprise Assistant Chief Searles at all.
I just want to piggyback on what everybody else is saying, and Dr. Bivens, I'm looking at you, but I'm not putting you on the spot tonight. But I do want to know what our support staff at the middle school and the high school, our the student interventionists and all the engagement advocates and everybody, the mental health services, what you guys feel about this, because you will be working directly with, and are working directly with them, and what impact it's having on you wrapping around our kids. Because I'd like to see these officers being part of the wrapping around. And so your opinions value very much to me on whether I think this is a really good idea. Because if I'm hearing a lot of people in your position saying this is not the way to go, I can't ignore that. But if you think it's great, and honestly, you don't have to answer tonight. But I mean, and anybody who's listening who works in that position, if, please feel free to reach out and tell us what your opinions are.
And I see a significant change in attitude from Principal Joe about this.
I would love to. I'm biting my tongue over back there, like going crazy. As I mentioned before when we were talking about the data, Officer Robbins, I mentioned her in that whole process anyway, because number one, like Joe said, she's part of the UMS staff. She's not something separate from who we are. And so when we have calls to go to a classroom or to assist with a student or support, Ms. Robinson goes. She's part of who we are. Most of our staff, we utilize her in various different ways based off of her skill set. And especially with the relationships that she has with our students. She has a lot of relationships with our students. People walk up to her and say, like Joe was saying, talk to her and say, hey, something's going on. We rely on her when we kind of like, okay, which direction do we go with this? Okay, let's get your feedback on this. This is a student that either you work with at the Youth Assessment Center. And I didn't know a lot about the station adjustment. So she kind of explained the station adjustments to me. I started referring students last year to the YAC Center, and when I found out she was directly associated, I was just ecstatic, because now we have a direct linkage. Maria comes to the school every week, but we didn't have like the direct linkage and just the understanding of how all of this can fit together from a mental health perspective, from a support perspective, and just in general pulling everything together and having her there. She's kind of like that connection between the school and the Youth Assessment Center, and not because of the legal perspective, but because of the support perspective, because they provide so much support for our families. We, like she said, we directly, refer students to the YAC Center. Again, not just for legal purposes. Many times, I was asking her about students she already knew. She was, oh yeah, I know that student. So yeah, if there's a situation going on here, if there's a situation going on here, oh yeah, I could support with that because I've spoken to that student before. Not that that it was a negative of meeting, but that she just knew of that student for whatever reason. So it's just from as far as I know, from a support standpoint, she's very helpful. She's very needed in our community because of the things that we want to do as a community. She's part of the community. UPD is part of the community. It's building positive relationships in relationship to the police department, because we don't want our students not liking the police department. And yes, everybody have bad apples here and there, okay? But police officers are our allies. We need to teach our students how to rely on UPD for help and support. And the best way to do that is to have an officer in-house talking, working with them so they can see that there's a positive thing when it comes to being an officer, and they're not just police officers. They're people who care, they have empathy, they come to you when you need them, and they just laugh with you in the hallway, you know. And so she's a person, you know, to them, and not a police officer. And this is about building community and building relationships with everyone in our community, because we're all one. You know, it takes a village, and if we don't include all parts of the village, then we can't help our families and our students. So that's my perspective.
So
Very
Tori,
well
I know
said.
Tori had a comment, but Chief, can you go to the last slide? 'Cause I think
I was
kind
going
of
to say, are we ready to go to the last slide?
Well, I think Tori had a comment, maybe Brenda has
So,
one more.
actually, I don't have a comment. I actually want from Joe to know what kind of data are you planning? Since I know you're a data guy, what kind of information gathering are you kind of getting from this to, or planning or thinking about? And maybe you haven't thought about that yet, but.
I've thought preliminarily, I guess, to say, I think one of the things that when we were discussing this presentation around police involvement, and when I think about last year, you know, that last year was quite the year in all kinds of different ways, and living it on a daily basis as a first-year principal in the building. What was, right, I know all the ins and outs of everything that happened in UMS in particular. And what was really, what I struggled with was, and it was a perfect storm of things, but the number of times something would happen and parents would want police involved over anything, from very small situations to really big situations. And what I've noticed this year in having a school resource officer there present is there's not this, so this is just early data that I'm noticing more anecdotally than kind of running, but I think they're also tracking, right, the amount of calls that police are getting to the building and an amount of arrests, and nationally we see that goes down. I'm kind of talking in circles, but what I'm trying to say is just the anxiety level of parents when something does happen is much calmer and less reactive to file a police report this year. And I think that's a combination of things, but having a school resource officer, we had a situation where a mom called me at 7:30 a.m. saying, I'm on my way up to the school, something happened with my son, I'm calling Urbana Police Department, and we're gonna meet you there with an officer. And that happened all the time last year. And I simply said, you're welcome to do that. We also have our school resource officer who will be here at 8 o'clock. We can sit down and talk together. She's like, oh, okay. So she came in, we sat down, and it was a situation that was a school discipline thing, a minor issue. The school resource officer, Miss Robinson, was like, this is a school discipline situation. I don't need to be involved. I'm just here to help. And the mom was great with that. So that's the type of data that I completely didn't understand coming into the role as principal, that type of involvement that a lot of families would request. And that anxiety level from families has gone way down by having a combination of things. The school is better and we're doing things better, but having a school resource officer in-house helps with that. I think in general, like the amount of more serious issues that require police, I'm monitoring the difference from year to year. The more serious incidents in the school, monitoring the differences in terms of data. And I think it won't just be all of this is improved because of an SRO, but it would be, you know, some correlation there for sure to monitor that data. So yes, short answer. Yep.
So if we look at the last, we can skip the uniform conversation for a minute, because I think the last bullet is more about what we're talking about right now. We did some brainstorming and talked about this relationship piece. So, you know, I know the officers are officers 12 months out of the year, but they're only with our students a certain amount of that time. So we had some discussions around what else can they be doing to be building relationships that will carry into the school year. So this is just kind of a brainstorm, you know, hodgepodge list of different things that we think are really important. So the Self-Made Kings relationship building, I know this summer, Preston James is kind of that conduit between the school and the city right now, but I know with the Goal Getters program in Unit 4, which is kind of what our Self-Made Kings is modeled after. The school resource officers are heavily involved in the relationship building during off-school times, during the summer, because then that carries over into the school year. So, you know, whoever, I know Darren is not going to be our person maybe forever. So, you know, if and when we move to a new person at the high school, that person would be very involved, you know, with this new group of boys. They had an activity today, one selfie at a time. They were over at the Holiday Inn. It was a great event. And so I already see some changes with them, but it again is all about relationships. All the people who are checking in with them constantly, and, you know, that they know are on their team and on their, you know, in it for them. John mentioned the Explorer post, so we're all kind of into scouting, several of us here at this table, so that was naturally something that we put on the list.
Yeah, and the only word on that line that bothers me is existing. Because I think the existing police, the only remaining law enforcement Explorer post in town is Unit 4, is Champaign School, or Champaign Police Department. The county used to have one, but I think there's a difference in philosophy. Even though Anthony and you have tried to bring both departments closer together, in terms of philosophy, there's still a difference in philosophy between the two police departments, and I would like to see we have our own on this side of Wright Street, because it only takes 5 or 6 young people.
And it only takes an hour a week, right? Isn't it they tell all the scout leaders? Just an hour a week?
We all know the truth about that.
I was bamboozled.
I know that's not right, but there's a little difference in there used to be a significant difference in the county sheriff law enforcement post and the Champaign post, and tread with your own cautions on that. But if we want UHS students involved, I think you'll have a better success if it's over here.
Okay.
Just saying that.
I just want to say that I was an explorer in high school, post 110 at the Urbana, and Sergeant Carl Maynard was the one that facilitated that. I was in it for a little over 2 years, and it was a wonderful, wonderful program back then. And I still have people telling me, I cannot believe that you're not in law enforcement today. Just because I enjoyed it, I just didn't go that route.
So that is something that we talked about. We want to explore. You know, I know we have several Eagles at our high school, and I know Bryant knows about that from his boys, my boys. I think Tori's son is an Eagle too. So
Me too.
and yep. So we have plenty.
I am too, since we're all
Yay! So there we go.
In my Explorer post.
That's right.
Okay. So I think we have a group already that we can rally around to kind of pull some other youth involvement into that. Youth police academies is something, I don't know if you want to say what that is, Brian.
So currently Champaign has a youth police academy. Matter of fact, my son attended there because Urbana didn't have one. And when we see some of these things, my usual default will kind of be, well, what exists before we start a whole nother structure? I often thought at one point, 25 years ago when I started, that there'd be a CU police district and we'd all be one giant police agency, and how little I knew when I was 23 years old getting started. So, but yeah, I would reach out to them first. What do you guys have? What do we get some of the interest? And all of a sudden, we're ready. We want to splinter off. We'll start together. I know that they have a youth police academy. They've done it out at the Elias Training Center, and they do days on crime scene and sort of another level of engagement. So it's unlike the Citizen Police Academy, which is one night a week for 10 weeks. These are compressed 1-week programs, kind of like a Park District summer camp type of deal.
And then we do run summer programs in the summer, so of course we would utilize our SROs on campus, but then also this would be a great opportunity, kind of what you were talking about, John, is some of those educational contacts with students and parents. So Michelle's had some training. I know, depending on who else we employ as a resource officer, this would be a way we could bring in some restorative practices, Some of those other great strategies that we know are already happening, if we skip down to the Youth Assessment Center, mentoring, those kinds of things. Non-enforcement contacts, which would be like special details, not just during the summer, but all year round. So, Jetty Roads Day, for example, having the school resource officers out with USD staff at the table. We were just at the Pride Day manning a table. Anytime we're out visibly promoting
Walk as
public
one.
awareness.
They could do the walk as one with us.
Yep, walk as one. CU days, we had a table. So, they just are, when our students see us as administrators or me or our principals, our teachers, then our school resource officers can be in those spaces too as non-enforcement contacts. Park district opportunities with our youth. There are a lot of things that happen in the summer. I'm sure we could find some ways to get our, again, just other opportunities to meet the younger students. Like Michelle talked about Risk Watch and the fact that she knows a lot of these middle school kids because she's been going into the elementary schools doing a lot of these Risk Watch assemblies. And then this would be, I'll let the chief kind of talk about this, but we would try to highly encourage vacation leave.
Yeah, so there is a union, and so we wouldn't necessarily tell them when exactly they have to have vacation time, but we would encourage them to take if you're going to go on your cruise, please, take it during the summer or some other time if you can help us out with that. We know you can't control when your sister gets married or your brother, but there are certain things that we'd like to try to make some asks. And yeah, I think when we discussed this, the idea of outreach efforts that were youth-focused was sort of what we were brainstorming on, and we stole some stuff from Champaign to look at, and so that was kind of where we had that we'd come up with. I mean, it's just something as simple too as all of a sudden we get back-to-back people. Well, my Cub Scout den wants to come tour the police station, and who's gonna meet him and host him? This is a perfect opportunity to keep that engaged. We've had people come. Well, I run such and such a program here. I'd like to come and visit with you guys. Well, who do we plug them in with? We're pulling an officer off the street and trying to do things. This is I think there's probably more than enough when we start sorting through all these.
My thinking is, if they're kind of considered a staff member, wouldn't they have summers off?
Well, they're 12-month employees, so we would utilize
Well, right
all
now
of their
they're 12-month
skills.
employees,
Yeah.
correct?
Well, they will still be police officers.
They will still be. So other departments have come up with other ways. Sometimes the sheriff's department, I think, has them go and serve papers like eviction notices and do other patrol-based things. And I've asked some other chiefs on what they do, and it kind of seems to be sort of split, whether they do patrol things, whether some try to sign them detectives for a couple of months, and then some will, which is the model we've chosen, do this sort of an outreach program system.
So
And
that's
there will be.
pretty much what they do, like when, over spring break, or when school's out, or?
Correct.
Okay.
This would be a lot of activity during the summertime.
Are you talking
too.
about currently?
Yeah, current.
Currently, they've got cases they're assigned. So if they're not in school, they're working cases.
Okay.
Out of
Right,
the
yeah,
investigations.
yes. Currently, that's correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, personally, I am all for this. I think it's very important for our schools just to have this peace of mind. The whole thing was when many people decided to get rid of the deans, we lost, the students and the families lost a lot of relationships. And I think these SRO officers are having to start from square one, and they're working together with Dr. Bivens, the other people involved, to actually try to build those relationships up. Because many of these students and families felt like they were just left out in the cold and pushed to the side. Their go-to for the school was gone. So they had no other contact. And so I believe that SROs are making a difference. I believe they are a very important part of our school system. I would just like to be able to find some kind of resources out there to help pay for this. I know that it is not cheap, but I do believe it is very important for peace of mind in the school environment, the way things are now in our current society.
We are going to continue. I know Rich has been a great resource. He sends me little things too. So between the two of us, we are going to find some grants out here to help us pay for this. I am committed to that. And looking at the clock, and I know it is late, and I know Michelle's and Joe have both had long days, so I want to get to the uniform discussion just really quickly. Just because, moving forward, we would love your feedback. So I've added here full uniform, casual clothing, and modified uniform. I'm going to let the chief talk about his preference. And NASRO and most of our other districts are utilizing the full uniform approach. I'm not suggesting that that's what we do. I know that might be the chief's preference, but I think he is willing to hear the thoughts of the board. And, we're not going to, let this kind of not go where we want it to go because of the uniform. Before Michelle leaves, though, I did want her to kind of be our model. And stand up, Michelle. So right now, one of the things that I talked to the deputy chief and the chief about is, I think Darren is great, and I love our high school SRO and the model that we, what we've been doing and what we've been able to do. But I do have concerns as a parent. I've got 2 boys there. I do feel like they are very casually dressed, which I know has been something that we as a district have promoted. But, there are times when I see Darren, and if his shirt is too baggy, you don't even know that he's, you don't see his badge, you don't see his gun. And we've had a lot of discussions around moving toward more of a modified uniform, which Michelle is kind of modeling for us. So this is what she typically wears. So she wears a polo shirt. Come on, you can come on up. So both of our officers.
Molly, can you get that on camera?
Can you get her on camera? Okay, so both of our officers do wear their guns, and that is a requirement. I'll let the chief talk about that. Darren usually has his badge on. Michelle has hers on her shirt. And she, every time that I've seen her at the middle school, she always has on her belt. And I think she, it doesn't impede what she's able to do. It doesn't seem to scare the kids or the parents. It doesn't, it's not an alarmist kind of thing. It's just what she does, and it's kind of what they're used to. One thing that I really like about this is when you see Michelle, she is the school resource officer. The thing that worries me a little bit at the high school is, we talked about de-escalation. I don't remember who said it, Joe. When we have parents that are escalated or students that are escalated, if Michelle enters the scene, it is going to cause a little bit of a de-escalation, just seeing her. She's clearly identified as the school resource officer. Can you turn around and show us the back too? Sorry. So, yeah. And so the chief has said, he'll kind of work with us on this, but I'll let you kind of talk about your thoughts around the modified uniform too.
Okay, so traditionally, we kind of asked around, and I think with all the agencies that were on the slide earlier with regards to the ratios, I think all of them but Rantoul, that was a split elementary and middle school, had a modified. I think everyone else was full regular police uniform. Chiefs like police uniforms because it makes everyone very clear who they are. So many times, I didn't know you were the cops, and detectives will sometimes stumble into that. And so then the fight escalates and things go because there's this misidentification from citizens. There's also that can happen with other officers. So yes, they will all have a gun, and for when that armed intruder event happens, that they are prepared and ready. There's an event or a phenomenon known as blue on blue. So if she's totally wearing civilian clothes and she's running down the hallway in an armed intruder situation going to the threat, and then the Champaign officers come to help, and they come in door 4 and they just see some person with a gun, we could potentially have some issues with regards to that. The full belt gives her the full array of all the different response tools that she's been trained on, and so that's a very positive thing that sometimes, depending on the situation, maybe just a spritz of the old pepper spray diffuses the whole thing. And so we don't, otherwise you're left with hands and a gun. So obviously chiefs like uniforms, but knowing from where we're at currently, this is sort of, I think I could get on board with the modified version. And the other thing that I thought was interesting is so many different shows and officers on, and even Hollywood stuff, which isn't portray policing correctly. A lot of people see officers in bike uniforms and hot weather uniforms and other types of things now. It's not as traditional as it once was.
Right.
So board thoughts about?
Personally, I'm for a full uniform. I think that people would respect seeing someone in a uniform. And also, when there have been infractions before, when you identify yourself, sometimes, just like what you said, people do not know. I mean, we've had teachers say, I'm a teacher, I'm an administrator, get off of him. And they do not do that, you know. But I think if someone was in a uniform, they would be more apt, hopefully, to step back. Hopefully. You don't know, you know, but I am for a full uniform. I think that it's a very important job, and I think that people need to learn how to respect and still have those bonds with people, you know, but respect that officer's job. So.
I'm probably going to agree with Peggy on, I bet you Peggy and I are in agreement on this one. I'm okay with the modified uniform. I almost really like the coat and tie better. But listening to our superintendent and our chief, but goes back to my earlier comments about not wanting the schools to look like armed camps.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, but actually, if I'm right, for the 26 years, we've had casually dressed SROs.
Very casually
And I haven't
dressed.
followed, but have there ever been incidences where there's been a problem because someone didn't, you know,
Well, I mean, I can't speak to any
No, I guess so,
specific, but, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know that I can tell you exactly that there's been instances where there have been. Having worn plain clothes for 16 years, there are times when that has been a problem. Now, I wasn't at the school, and sometimes it's, hey, I'm the police. Oh, sorry, I didn't know that, you know. So.
I mean, I support the casual dress. I mean, if we really are serious about that this is a staff person and not a police officer, I mean, nothing says that more than that.
Is there a way, though, that they could be more visible without looking like police uniforms? I mean, I'm just saying that especially with the change that we've had in administration at the high school and the middle school the past couple of years, my own kids have come home from school and said, I don't know who so-and-so is. You know, they just don't know. If you were a different color, maybe not gray, something more visible, maybe orange and black, because that's, you said that, actually, orange.
Well,
I mean,
it's funny that you asked that.
Yeah.
Because, as a matter of fact, this was one that we had this is their hot weather uniform for the officers. She's not Officer Lynx. So, yes, and matter of fact, we already came up with that, well, we could do a badge on one side and an Urbana tiger on the other side. And, you know, so yes, I guess we're sort of limited by maybe how we want to think if we want to work on that modified.
Yeah, and it's not just for immediate, I mean, it's so that they're identified as not a parent who's visiting the school or just anybody else as specific. Well, yeah, but also because when someone's in a panic situation, if I see a police officer and I need help, my brain's not functioning, but I see that uniform and I think, oh, thank God you're here, you know, so that it's a modification of that. If it were orange or red or something bright and a student wanted to find her or the other officer, it's quick and easy, see them in the hallway and boom, you know exactly who you're going to.
And orange would be easy to see in the crowd.
Exactly, yes, passing periods, yeah.
And that's what we have now with the students, I can say that. I've walked into the office, and I've had parents sitting there
Microphone,
waiting
yeah.
to... I've walked into the office, and I've had parents in there waiting to speak to somebody, and their first response is, oh, you're the new officer, I'm going to be talking to you. And they will actually stand up and introduce themselves. So, and a lot of those parents I know from the community and from being on patrol, and it's comes down to, great, I know you. I mean, a lot of us that step off of patrol into an SRO position, we have a different relationship with people in the community than others. So it kind of comes down to what Mr. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Dimmitt proceeded is that it takes a special person to do exactly what you guys want from Urbana as us as SROs. But one of the things that I'm really big on, and I tell
the kids this when I educate. The one thing about a uniform, I understand the soft uniform, but where we get into is children, this generation have a very big problem with authority. And there are certain laws that they do not abide out in the community because of the way that they're allowed to behave within the school. And by learning how to interact with an officer and learning how to not necessarily, respect, but we have to respect them as well. But learning how to interact, they'll know. The biggest problem we have is, we will be on patrol trying to stop a fight, and they will walk away from us. Well, technically, you can't do that. You have to stop and talk. But a lot of these kids, I understand why, because they don't have that relationship at home to learn. By giving them a uniform, even if it's soft, the kids know exactly who I am. When I enter a room, when I walk down the hallways, they know. And it's a different kind of relationship. So that's one of the things, is we're teaching them how to interact with police outside of school when you're pulled over. One of the things, I've actually worked with Mr. James regularly with a lot of his videos and a lot of things that he does, because there are a lot of juveniles and young men that are young people that haven't learned how to react with police if bad things happen. And that's one of the things we have to get through to these kids, is that, like you said, I'm here for help, but they also have to learn how to interact with us so things don't happen that shouldn't happen.
Thanks.
Any of the rest of you have observations? Our superintendent is asking for some guidance here.
I'm okay with modified. I think the belt clearly identifies her as a police officer, along with the badge ID that she has. It's not an overkill either. So, like my side conversation went, I would like to see something a little bit brighter. But
Yeah, we talked about orange. And,
yeah. So, but yeah, modified is fine with me.
If it helps the officer perform their duties, perform the job, if it's easier to actually do the job wearing a modified uniform, then I'm okay with it.
Ethan?
I'm good with the soft, and but I don't want you looking like you're an Urbana tiger. Well, exactly like the chief said, we need to be able to identify you in an emergency, and we don't want you blending in. Yes, it would be wonderful if you were all orange and black or whatever, and we wouldn't want to put, tiger stripes on you and, silly stuff like that. But I would prefer that we stick with something. You would wear something like this out in the community, and I think you should be identified that way within our four walls in any of our buildings that you need to walk into.
Right now with what I wear, because I don't wear one with a badge. Right now what I wear, I don't wear one with a badge. A lot of the kids think I'm just security. So I get a lot of questions, are you really a police officer? Yes, I'm really a police officer. So that's one of the biggest things we have now, because they are so used to seeing us out in the community in full gear is the issue. So
when you arrive at the school, are you coming in your own car, or we actually have a squad car that's parked out?
Right now I use a marked squad car. I use it for deterrent. It gets parked right up front, so the kids get off the bus and they know that I'm here, and it is used for dismissal in the afternoon. So when the high school students walk by to get to the buses where we know a lot of our problems are at Comcast, they know that I'm there, and they know that I'm going to be standing outside at dismissal. So it shows that we're there and that we're on the lookout, and they're starting to learn that I have eyes everywhere.
And Darren parks his car right outside the Iowa Street door.
Yes.
Okay, well, we are a community of four seasons, so how much more different would we see a soft uniform per season? Jackets or parkas or so on?
It would probably just be a long sleeve polo.
Okay.
Jennifer, can I ask, maybe you've already done this, or are you planning to solicit input from students and faculty at middle school and high school? I mean, in addition to
Around
the
just
people,
the
around the
model?
issue of going from a half-time to 2 full-time, and then, maybe these smaller issues, but more just the shift, went from a half-time
Well,
to
we
two
kind
full-time.
of are already doing, I mean, we started this in February, May-ish, and kind of, like we said, we kind of pulled together something to get through the end of the year. I think Joe's staff has, you know, every single person who has stopped me and talked to me is super pleased with the fact that we have a full-time person at the middle school. I don't know that you've heard anything different. Have you? Okay. Yeah. We haven't engaged students directly, but unless you have, but I have.
So I did a formal faculty meetings at the beginning of the year, talked about the new model, introduced.
You can pick it up.
Introduced
You
Ms.
know.
Robinson. And then with students, it's been a lot of, during our team talks, the first couple days of school, we meet with every team that students are on and go over the new year, goals, our mission, expectations, and the introduction of the school resource officer. So students all heard that. There were questions at the beginning from both some adults, but a lot of kids, like, why is that, like, are they here to, there were a couple kids that, is she here to arrest us or what? And no, it's here about school safety. It's about relationships. It's about everything that we've discussed tonight. And all kids have been like, oh, okay. And it hasn't been a big deal. And staff have been very appreciative. Parents have been very appreciative. And like the whole idea of community policing and the relationships between police and students is, I think this is a great way to improve that. I think we were talking about a couple kiddos today. I mentioned earlier, some of our kids of color, black males, really building strong relationships with her and having conversations daily about a lot of different things. I think that's what we think about when we think about community policing, right? And so I'm seeing more positives than any kind of negative feedback.
With our growing student involvement at the high school, I would endorse Peggy's issue that we should bring the students at the high school into this decision-making if there's some way possible to do that as well.
Because I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about the climate at both schools.
Oh, yeah.
Mine's secondhand, because I don't have kids at the schools like you do, so I really appreciate what you have to share. But none of them have ever said it was because of the SRO. Now, and I've never asked, is it because of the SRO? But they've mentioned other things, because they'll say, what's better? And they'll tell me all kinds of things. Never has it been because we have more police at the school. But I've never asked that. And you guys have kids there, so it matters to me. I mean, clearly things are better. My question is,
I wouldn't say it is a direct relationship, we would say,
That's not
it's
Yeah.
comparing an apple and apple,
Right.
yeah. A direct correlation at all. I think it's just a combination of
I think
lots of things.
it's the whole thing.
It's,
Yeah.
at the middle school and the high school, I mean, yeah.
It's me. I've got an oddball question to ask Michelle. Your weapon, has there been an issue with any of the students wanting to grab at it or touch it when you're in the halls?
No. So the most questions that I get is everybody wants to see my taser. My response is I don't carry a taser, and per department policy I couldn't use one at the school, so I don't need one. I have had kids ask me why I carry a gun, because none of the other staff members carry one. My response is because I'm there to protect them. If anybody were to come into that school and harm them, they have to get through me before they can get to you. And that is how I have addressed it. And it's come down to, okay, I've got it. I mean, you have to think about it. A lot of these kids are taught what to do if there is a mass shooting in our schools. But at no time are any of these kids taught that we actually have defense inside the school. One of the things that it comes down to, you look at it, if you want to really look at safety, it takes a patrol officer, depending on where they're at, it can take them up to 3 to 5 minutes going code, and most of us would go very, very fast to get to the school in a situation like that. One of the other things they've asked about is I carry a tourniquet on here, so if anything major were to happen, I have it. But that's the biggest thing. I spend a lot of time at the front door, patrolling the hallways. It's kind of like in our beat, you get to know the people that are there. When the strange car is parked at a place that you're not used to seeing it, you're going to see it. When a strange person comes into the school and is walking around, you're going to see those things. And I'm your first line of defense. I'm the one that's going to be able to get somebody there the quickest to save a lot more than what we have because I'm inside.
And Ruth Ann, Darren wears, it's not as obvious because Darren doesn't wear the full belt. He just wears his gun kind of clipped on the side of his badge. So he has it on at all times. It's not as noticeable as the Michelle's because he's not wearing the full belt, but, and I haven't heard of any incidents of the high school students touching his gun or grabbing for it or anything like that ever.
That's never been an issue.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Okay, I want the public that's sitting still at home and are awake to understand all that type of stuff. That's why I like to pose my questions the way I do. Because great, gotta ask.
It's okay.
People know.
It is 10:25. Are there other burning questions that need to be asked tonight?
We're gonna be talking contract-ish type issues
So yes, so
in the
this
future, though.
was a study session, so this was really just to inform and enlighten, and of course we wanted to bring UPD here so they could share their goals around their officer and how their officers would best support us as part of this collaboration. So yes, this was just a study session topic to educate, and I think we've gotten a lot of feedback from you guys. We have collected some intergovernmental, we actually have everybody's, I think. Rich has collected the intergovernmental agreements from almost every single district around. So we're not gonna just kind of start from scratch. We're gonna use the good work that other people have put in and kind of look at that and start hammering out an intergovernmental agreement that we can bring back. I know we are gonna be presenting a city council, almost the exact same presentation on Monday night.
Monday night, 7 o'clock, in
So-
case you want to see it again.
Tune in if you want to see it again, or come and ask questions if you think of something between now and then. Yeah, so we're gonna come, Joe's gonna go, Michelle, so we'll be there to support the presentation at the council as well.
I want to say one more thing before I shut off my mic. Where I am on the fence, so everybody knows, I'm with Peggy at this moment because I want to see facts and figures in a contract and just what that's really going to read like.
Okay. We will do that.
And I'm gonna, second issue that we try to, I know you don't have the high school here for tonight for a reason, but I'd like to find out if high school students have been involved in this discussion, brought in either through Student Senate or through Theo Johnson and all the people that are hanging around with him right now and all the stuff they're doing. But I'd just like to see them have some voice in the decision.
So again, we already have full-time presence at the high school, John, so that's
Yeah,
not new.
no,
Oh, okay, I just was.
Well, no, we have 3
pointing-
days a week plus
Plus
Monday
and Friday,
maybe.
so there's somebody
But-
kind of there every day.
But if we're talking about changing how they're dressed, what they
Sure.
carry,
Mhm.
there's some things in here that I think the high school students will
Sure.
have valuable insight.
Yep.
So,
Okay. Other,
I'm ready to move on unless other board members.
all right.
Okay, good. We have no call for future special or executive.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're almost part of us already. We have no call for future special exec meetings. Do we have a superintendent's report?
Oh, yes, so Lori's getting ready to pull that up now, so keeping with our new model here. Wait for Lori. Okay, so a lot of good things have happened in the last 2 weeks since I was here last time. So back to the beginning, Lori. I think you're at the end.
Sorry, I was looking at it before.
Okay. All right, so, there we go. So yes, I wanted to thank everybody for their support at the United Way Battle of the Paddle. I think last time we were here, it was before the event, so this is a picture of us with Sue Gray and Dr. Zola and I. This was Dr. Zola's idea, actually not mine, to dress up in our college graduate gowns. And this was my cheering section. So we had several staff members who came out and wearing their Urbana Better Together shirts to support both districts. and supporting United Way. So that was a great event. Mayor Marlin, she's still here. She actually battled the paddle with Mayor Finan. Woohoo! So it was a great event. So who won? Of course. We didn't keep score either, so very smart. All right. And next is the dual language picnic. Whoops, maybe I'm out of order. Sorry, Lori. Okay. So this is Tyler Sims, talented 7th grade students, had their artwork at the local Starbucks. So I don't know if you had an opportunity to go over and see some of our 7th graders, Emma Stevenson, Khalil Lascar-Harris, Rachel Labansky, and Lucia Lachero. So I think it is still over at Starbucks right now. So when you go over and pick up your coffee, you can go over and see some of our 7th grade students' art. This was a dual language picnic. Families from Leo, Yankee Ridge, Dr. Williams, collaborated with the Park District. I think the parachute and the Park District brought out a lot of games and activities for the students and the families who attended. They had a great weather night. They had dinner, and they basically had a little meeting out there and collected feedback from the family. So that was another great event. These are some of those students that John was talking about. These were a couple of hours. We didn't get everyone there because we had breakfast at 7:30, so it was like, ooh, they didn't.
2 pictures of the same group.
Yes, so Mitch, Dr. Berenson is in the second picture there in the middle. So these are national merit recognized students. These students attended a congratulatory breakfast with Dr. Berenson because they were recognized for their PSAT scores. They scored in the top 50,000 of 1.6 million students. So pictured here, we have Max Ando in the red, Malcolm in the kind of tannish jacket there, Michael Tassine, and Olivia Rosenstein, who is also our one of our National Merit semifinalists. Not pictured, but still recognized, our students Samuel Hummel, Luca Manton, and Megan Paluska. So we just want to
You would
congratulate
recognize
them.
Michael because he's been here a couple times to run the
Michael
cameras for
Yep,
us.
he has. This is Theo. John mentioned Theo, so this is Theodore Johnson. You probably saw the press release of Theo's announcement that he is part of the ISBE Student Advisory Council. So Theo is a new member. He joined 10 returning members from across the whole state of Illinois. To provide some student perspective to the Illinois School Board of Education. So there was an article in the News Gazette about Theo, so hopefully you had an opportunity to read that, but I wanted to just, again, congratulate Theo on behalf of the board.
And he's one of the students that has appeared before us as well, about a year ago. And that group of students is still working actively and is waiting us to take the next step forward with Derek Peterson to get students involved at the board level.
And that is going to be on October 24th. So we'll be working with Dr. Berenson to set that up. So this is this past Saturday at CU Pride Fest. I don't know if you saw, this is our tent. We had the UHS Gay Straight Alliance, UMS had a table, and I don't know if you saw the picture of our group walking in the parade. It was a great photo. So thanks to all the families who stopped by the USD 116 tables to show support for our LGBTQ plus student groups. This news just came in today, so congratulations to King. We just received a press release this morning that King was recognized for their 2 early childhood classes as 2019 Gold Circle of Quality recipients. So Gold Circle programs have met the highest standards for quality in 3 areas: learning environment and teaching, administration, and training and education. So congrats to King, and of course Chris Vowles for supporting the program, and the UECS staff just for making it such a great collaborative effort. So that was brand new news. So upcoming things. Tomorrow is Walk to School Day. So I know Mayor Marlin left because she's got to get up and walk really early. She's going to be walking at Dr. Williams. Chief Seraphin, who was here tonight, will be walking at Wiley, and Deputy Chief will be at Yankee Ridge. Cameron and I are going to kind of try to hit a couple different elementary schools in the morning. So if you want to come out and walk, I'd say go to your school around 7:45, 7:50, and meet up with a group and just walk to campus with them. And then Thursday and Friday, student-led parent-teacher conferences. So this is something new. I know Jean Quarter talked a lot about this, hopefully in the spring, when you guys approve the calendar. So this is the parent-teacher conference information at the top. This is a message, I won't read it all, but this message went out to families via Skylert, just encouraging them to bring their students with them to the conferences. All of our schools are doing something a little different. Around highlighting work, sharing strengths and goals, doing some goal setting at the conferences. So this again is a pilot, so we'll be taking attendance of all the students who come with their parents, and we'll bring back some information to you about how it goes. So we're going to do this for our first set of conferences and then again in the spring. And last but not least, I didn't put up a slide about homecoming, but just so you guys have it on your radar, next Friday is homecoming, parade and the game. I don't want to spoil some of the fun things that we're planning, so you'll hear about those. We'll be sending out things on Facebook and on social media about what we're going to do for the parade and how we're going to try to engage our community around homecoming and just kind of build attendance at the game. And our numbers, I think, at the parade have dwindled in the last few years. So we're going to try to get more community presence out at our parade and for some of our homecoming events this year. So put it on your calendars. Next Friday, October 11th. That's it.
All right, thank you. Board reports.
Ann and I went to the first meeting of the Marketing and Communication Parent Committee last week, and Cameron Williams did an excellent job facilitating discussion. There was quite a number of parents who were there besides Ann and me. A discussion about effective and ineffective forms of communication, and I understand over the coming months we're going to sort of drill down into those specific ideas. So it was a good first meeting, and Cameron did an excellent job.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Illini Division School Board meeting this Thursday in Mattoon. I'm going, Ann's going, and Tori's going. Good. It's always a good time and always so educational.
Any other board reports this evening? Motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried.